You're listening to Second Cut. This is the weekly podcast where we talk about topics in film theory, criticism, history, etc. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one doing as little as possible.
I'm Sam, and yeah, all this, it's okay with me.
En jag heter och jag är den person som faktiskt har läst böckerna. Which is my butchering of the translation that my Swedish friend Eva sent me of I'm Kieran and I'm the one who's actually read the books.
Okay. That's almost sardonic to go with me and Sam. But
I decided. I just sat there and I went, I'm doing a Swedish movie. It was actually Swedish. Let me just ask her to translate my intro. So I've been practicing that for the last 2 days and butchering it.
You know what's...
You got it written out phonetically.
Well, she also got herself to record it as well. She did 2 different versions, a slightly more informal version, the formal version, but the trouble was her informal version just about didn't match up what she'd written, so I went for the slightly formal version.
Nice. Yeah, the Nordic languages are closest to English from what I found, but I did not find that listening to the dialogue.
Yeah, there's lots of kind of hard consonants in Swedish and Finnish. You know, lots of going on in there.
Yeah, we're talking
very
about...
kind of deep guttural vowels as well. Anyway.
Yeah, we're talking about detective movies, not linguistic. Maybe we'll get there one day.
Yeah.
Although, you know, is interpreting images, does that count as linguistics in a sense? Who knows? But yeah. Oh, Kieran, yeah, you're in costume because you have a police booth cup there, even though it is Doctor Who. Is Doctor Who a detective?
No. He gets hunted by detectives half the time.
He does a lot of investigating to work out what's going on, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, is an investigator a detective though?
I don't know. What is a detective? Is it anyone who is detecting? Does it have to be public sector, private sector? You know?
I mean, you go back and you get kind of early forerunners of detective fiction because obviously it comes in before film. Technically, as far as I can work out, what is commonly regarded as the first detective or first kind of thing published with a assigned police detective in it is Wilkie Collins' The Moonstone, a book which I didn't grab off the shelf, obviously, because I'm a moron and forgot about it. Before that, you did have, Edgar Allan Poe had stories, Murder in the Rue Morgue, Purloined Letter, and Mystery of Marie Roget, I think it is, with his kind of consultant almost. It's Auguste Dupin, isn't it? I think it is. I can't remember. It's been so long since I've read Rue Morgue. Who has kind of abstractions that will almost become Holmes-like in future, thinking of things, and the police come to him for help, and he discovers there's an ape that's actually done the murder from Murder the Rue Morgue, and that's the famous one. Clive Barker did a short story, The New Murders in the Rue Morgue, which is kind of almost like the Rue Morgue's murders have been redone again. What's it this time? But then in sort of 1959, Wilkie Collins brings out The Moonstone. He brings out The Woman in White, which is seen as a proto detective thing. So there's a lot of detecting going on, but it is more of what they call a sensationalist novel. It kind of is the equivalent of a blockbuster in 1859. And then The Moonstone comes out the year after, and this is kind of the first one with at least in the English language, as far as I know, with an actual hired detective to solve a crime. Hilariously enough, he doesn't really solve the crime. It just kind of materializes later, you know.
Yeah, because it's slightly different with like Sherlock Holmes, stuff like that, isn't it? Really, I mean, that's obviously the detective stories. He's a detective, but he's just like he's his own guy, isn't he? He's just like he's almost doing it as like a hobby, and he's so good at it that people come to his door.
Yeah,
and then he success.
Yeah, and then he kind of takes it on. So the first Sherlock Holmes story, which is Studying Scarlet, comes out in I can't remember if it's 86 or 87. Part of me wants to say 87, but then I go it might have been 86. So around that time.
We're talking 1886, 87, right?
Oh yeah. And that comes in then. Hilariously enough, Sherlock Holmes is now, I think they've worked out the character that's been portrayed on screen more than anybody else. it is the
Really,
most
more than
replicable.
Dracula.
More than Dracula, or at least in more kind of things, because also including kind of short films, and I think it's film and TV. Dracula will be up there now. It's probably in the top 10 at the very least.
Yeah, I think from what I've read, I think it's between the two of them. They keep vying for each other. They keep overtaking each other. You know, 'cause there's at least a few more adaptations of both every year. You know.
I tell you what, though, it's not far off to have, and I'm surprised nobody has done Sherlock Holmes versus Dracula. Considering Stephen Moffat has done versions of both, I'm surprised he hasn't just combined the two, because he did the BBC Sherlock and then also did the 3-part Dracula miniseries anyway. But yeah, so you then go further on, and then eventually the trouble is Sherlock Holmes becomes so ingrained in the public consciousness when you eventually get to Poirot that Agatha Christie's writing. The first one, Murder of Roger Ackroyd, comes out in. Is it Murder of Ackroyd or is it? It's Mysterious Affairs of Styles, isn't it? It's the first one, comes out in 1920. He's already saying things like we go like your Sherlock Holmes would say. You know, well, that's how ingrained it is already that we can't get away from Sherlock Holmes at this point. This is 1920. This is just the idea of a detective. And I think even now, to a certain point, you say kind of private detective to somebody, a lot of the English-speaking world have to try and stop themselves from thinking of a pipe, of a deer stalker, and a giant magnifying glass, because that's kind of the thing it's kind of become known for. Thankfully, our films will kind of get away from that. I say that very much get away from that, even though some of them very much go back into a noir thing.
Yeah, we all did. You know, I don't really know if the girl with the dragon tattoo is neo noir. I'm sure some people describe it that way, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I suppose it's the only straight murder mystery out of the three of them, really. You know, I think both Chinatown and Long Goodbye have other concerns, or they're like the deconstructions of the genre to various extents.
I do think Fincher's is more visually noir than this one is. Like we watched Let the Right One In, and you know, clearly the girl with the dragon tattoo has a lot of like visual similarity to that, just because the place
it's more just Scandinavian noir rather than a kind of neo noir.
Yeah, and coming out within a couple of years of each other, and obviously he had the killing on TV at the same time as well, didn't you? It's like these are all kind of borrowing from the same kind of sources, you know, using that that Nordic kind of landscape to great effect for the story.
Apparently, the first not noir, the first detective film was Sherlock Holmes Baffled, 1900 silent short made by the American Mutoscope and Biograph Company. So there you go, a 30-second Sherlock Holmes film was the first one.
Yeah, and it goes on from there, you know.
Yeah, the 30s, 40s, 50 noir, like obviously huge, and we didn't pick any of those, so we can do a separate early noir film, because that set up so many of the visual like stylings for detective movies.
I mean obviously the noir stuff is kind of an outcome of two things. One, essentially a rebellion against sort of the cozy crime, as the kind of Agatha Christie stories would become known as, you know, these kind of the golden age of crime, the locked room mystery kind of thing, where everything's kind of fairly nice and cozy. And then you get into you have sort of the pulp stuff in 1920s in America, but especially in the 30s, when you have Raymond Chandler coming out with The Big Sleep in 39 and the hard-boiled detective, really kind of that, and the Maltese Falcon. Those two texts, I think, very much set it, and both of them
Double Indemnity.
Long Goodbye. But then, obviously, the production things during the war era, there's the long-standing. I think it's actually a myth, just that they were running low on lights, so they needed films that they could shoot for obviously pricing reasons, budgetary reasons. That didn't use
the lights to the front.
Yeah, but I do think it's more about making your kind of budget go further, really, you know, and you might think a certain way, whatever it say, it might be absolute hokum, you know, pop, but it'll look fantastic and it'll have a certain atmosphere to it. And I think a lot of these stylist conventions also allow them to tell quite dark and twisted stories, but obviously not run afoul of like production code at that time as well. So you can suggest a lot, and just if it's all kind of wreathed in kind of shadow and like people's eyes and picked out by shafts of light and everything. I think it can go a lot further, and your darkness can be kind of amplified even if you can't actually depict that much explicitly.
And it is no coincidence that this starts in sort of 39, 40, 41, when the war kind of kicks in. And I think even if you look at Hitchcock, sort of in the 30s, he's doing kind of bigger adventure stuff. And then you get to sort of 41, 42, he does Suspicion, he does Shadow of a Doubt, definitely is his darkest film for years, probably until he gets to Rope or even beyond, and a Notorious event will come after, and that is fairly noirish, although that's starting to broaden stuff out. But it's no coincidence that the tone of those noirs is very much you can't really have. I mean, you have a bit of escapism in kind of the action gunslinging hero, but the tone is very dark, and everything's quite oppressive in those films. And that's why kind of when you have noir films now, they are neo-noir, although noir would only be coined like years after the whole thing. Was it like the 50s or 60s? I'm sure Jacob's got the date down somewhere.
I do not, although I have read Dark City, which, I mean, when we do noir, we can get more specifically into that. But, detective movies do not have to be noir at all. Like you were talking about with Agatha Christie, those new Poirot movies are just very straight mysteries that are fun.
Yeah. Because, I mean, Agatha Christie was setting the template, so.
Yeah, but it was at the time when these stories were coming out. They were literally like the first kind of page turners almost, weren't they? People would literally race through them to find out who did this at the end. That was the appeal of it. It was like an easy kind of way to kind of deliver your entertainment to a desperate audience.
And I mean, you've obviously got the influence again of the pulp magazines that are in the rack. So you have lots of short stories as well, which is where people like Sam Spade and even kind of the stories that would eventually go into the Philip Marlowe stories. A lot of them started off as short stories that he'd eventually kind of combine and pastiche together and change them to be Philip Marlowe. But Agatha Christie had said for ages that she reckoned that about 50,000 words is about the right length for a detective story. For reference, kind of short novels now today that you'd expect to sell are around 80,000, which is about 300 pages. So hers are considerably shorter. So the PhD novel I'm working on, it will come in at around 80,000, give or take. So it's not twice the length, but a great deal longer than the stuff she's doing. And hers, and I mean, we're picking on Agatha Christie just because she's amazing. She's the best-selling author of all time, and her stuff is immensely readable. And part of that fact is that essentially a good 70% of it is just straight dialogue. It's back and forth. It's very quick fire and then sparse description to give you the information that you need. And that's what makes it so effectively page turning, because it's very quick and readable. There's no dense prose in there.
Yeah.
And obviously all this stuff, Agatha Christie and Edgar Wallace and things like that, would get translated into Italian and be mass marketed with the yellow paperbacks, hence the giallo. And that obviously still springs on from detective, because the giallo was kind of violent crime stories where you'd have detectives in there as well, which is why most kind of Argento movies feature a police detective.
Kieran, you're telling me that the giallo movies are detective movies, even if the characters are not detectives? Interesting.
Yeah, but there was always pretty much always a detective in there. There's always a police detective doing some work as well.
We were fighting about
just a civilian in the wrong place at the wrong time. You're having to find out what's going on.
Also, the detective movies, because there's always a bottle of J&B yellow label whiskey in there, which somehow we've picked 3 detective movies with no J&B yellow label whiskey in there. Very upsetting.
I mean, basically, 2 reasons we're doing this episode now, really. Is one, Wake Up Dead Man is out in kind of limited release in some cinemas this week before full release on Netflix next month. And the Benoit Blanc trilogy now, it's the most successful kind of example of this in recent memory, really.
And like original.
But in terms of new characters, but like the audience kind of audience reach and kind of pop culture kind of cachet and everything like that. It's
I would actually say probably the most successful, probably since the Millennium Trilogy, the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo trilogy, in its various forms. It's very rare that you get kind of several of them that have that reach. You might get one, something like Gone Girl or Girl on a Train, or kind of one film, but to get three is very rare.
Yeah, and this is also like it's also we're in the midst of November as well at the minute. You know, a lot of people, just like 31 Days of Horror. A lot of the film space online at the minute is taken up with people catching up on film noir and detective films they've never seen before and posting their findings.
Will you be doing a roundup at the end of the month, Sam, of yours?
I won't have a full 30 of them this time. I think I've only done 7, so I'll probably get to 10 and leave it there for this month, I think.
Beautiful. I will give in a slight third tie-in that obviously the American version of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo starred Daniel Craig, and Daniel Craig is Benoit Blanc in these films, so it's all tying together somehow,
Oh, and that's another 2 civilians, by the way, doing detective work. I pulled up IMDb's top 25 detective films. It's Vertigo.
Is Blue Velvet in there?
I don't know. We'll get there. I'm only at the top. Vertigo, Laura, the Maltese Falcon, M, which we have a Maltese Falcon episode, the Bogart one. You can go watch that.
And I've watched Laura this month. I'd recommend it if people haven't seen it.
Memento, Fargo, Mulholland Drive, The Third Man, Touch of Evil, The Big Lebowski. That's interesting. The Secret in Their Eyes, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Sherlock Jr., 7, Memories of a Murder, The American Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Knives Out, The Big Heat, Silence of the Lambs, Chinatown, LA Confidential, Zodiac, Mystic River, and Prisoners. So that's IMDb's. I don't know if like the site puts it together, fans, if it's voted on, who knows. But I mean, just in that you could see the variety, and especially as you move forward in time, like it starts to become less traditional, starts to become darker, more twisted, and especially with the 3 films we picked, like they really delve into the darkness and the cynicism, which was always present in the classic noir films. But obviously in the 70s, you could, show things and criticize things in the way that you could not in the 40s.
I mean, I remember doing a studying television module in first year, which was one run by Glenn Krieber, who I know Jacob somehow has read some of his academic work, because years ago you're like, I've read this article by Glenn Krieber. It's like, oh my god, she's my personal tutor for my MA. Nice. But I don't know whether it's just for TV genres or genres in general, but his thing, I'm not sure if it's his thing, but he definitely taught it at the very least, so I'm going to credit him with giving me the knowledge at least, was that it kind of goes through 4 stages. You have an experimental period, a kind of classical period, you have a kind of revisionist period, and then you have a postmodern period. So you start off kind of testing the waters, everything's still kind of up in the air, kind of figuring it out. You then have a period where these are the conventions. You then have one where people play around with it, and then you have one where essentially we take the conventions and we completely upend absolutely everything going. And I remember that because this was one where they messed up our exam. Essentially, they gave us the wrong paper. But I was preparing that question going into the exam and doing research on stuff. So I was doing kind of crime detective things. And the shows I was doing was a British show called Dixon of Dock Green, which is like a very old 40s, 50s police procedural. I then did the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the ITV Granada series, which I'm sure Sam is aware of. Essentially, Jeremy Brett was kind of considered, along with Basil Rathbone, the Sherlock Holmes until kind of Benedict Cumberbatch came along and possibly Downey Jr. I then did, for experiment, kind of like revisionist experimental kind of changing around, I did a show called Jonathan Creek, where it's a magician that was solving impossible crimes, played by Alan Davis. And then my kind of postmodern one, I did Hannibal, where essentially kind of like the killer is one of the detectives. It completely flipping the whole thing on its head for 3 series. So it goes through its changes and all these things over time.
Yeah, and you mentioned Raymond Chandler. We're about to talk about one of his films, but obviously, The Big Sleep was like one of the big, early noir detective films. What was that, 39? Oh, there you go.
So I want to say the book was 39. The film was slightly
early
later.
40s.
Yeah,
Early
41, 42, I think. Yeah, so first published by Hamish Hamilton in 1939.
46 was the film.
Yeah.
Yeah,
hilariously enough, with Humphrey Bogart, who was in the Maltese Falcon. So realistically, for a lot of kind of American detective stuff, we just blame Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Sam, do you want to go ahead and get into the long goodbye? I don't have a good transition, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, before I start, just say I've got a very nice Blu-ray of this. So this cover, very, very nice and graphic of Philip Marlowe. But then you take the little info booklet out of it, and it's his legs. And when you put it together with the DVD case, you get Marlowe with his legs and the cat at his feet.
That's fun.
So that's a nice touch.
The cat aspect of this movie really spoke to me.
I noticed that today. Yeah. The cat is key. I mean, maybe we should. I don't know. We should start with the cat, but I'll definitely be bringing up the cat. So this is Robert Altman's kind of slightly deconstructed, cynical kind of take on like the classic kind of detective story. So it's an adaptation of Raymond Chandler's novel. It kind of has like the broad strokes of kind of Long Goodbye's plot and the key beats and everything, but a few key things have been changed as well to make it a bit more nihilistic, essentially, and a bit more appropriate for the 70s setting, which it's now at. So, because obviously it was contemporary that when the original book was released, but they decided to bring it forward in time to the mid 70s. Although Elliot Gould's Marlowe still kind of dresses like a guy from the 50s, and drives a 50s car, and there's a few like it's almost like out of time, but it definitely reflects like the cynicism of the era.
Did you see what Altman called him?
Rip Van Marlowe.
Yeah.
Too
bad he didn't have a beard.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So it's quite difficult to describe the plot of this. It's funny how much this comes up with the movies I pick for this show, but it's very much a vibes movie, isn't it? Really.
It really is.
Yeah.
Also an LA movie, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, they've talked about The Big Sleep, especially in that there's so many twists and turns in it. It's actually quite hard to keep up. But it's like what actually happens in it isn't really the point of it, and that's why like the Coen Brothers ends up essentially doing The Big Sleep again with The Big Lebowski. The sort of said it's basically The Big Sleep, but we have a few key changes.
The thing with The Big Sleep is that there is a plot line in it where there is a chauffeur that gets killed off and kind of like vanishes from the plot. And somebody asked Chandler years later, what happened to the chauffeur? Like, why did he disappear from the plot? And Chandler went, you know what happened? I pretty much forgot about him. I forgot to write him back into the plot. Like, forgot to wrap that bit up. Sorry, guys. That's my mistake.
There's a Jewish secret agent detective like kids TV show called Secret Agent Immis. And a major plot point in an episode is the chauffeur cognate, because the chauffeur isn't kosher.
Amazing.
We lose our minds here.
Yeah. Broad strokes. It's about we follow schlubby private eye Philip Marlowe, played by Elliot Gould, who takes his slightly dodgy friend to Mexico one night, then gets chased by the gangsters who are after his dodgy friends, and then takes the case of a reclusive alcoholic novelist played by Sterling Hayden. All the while, he really just wants to get back home and just feed his cat. He's a very needy cat. I mean, we're introduced to him basically. He's just collapsed on a bed, listening to with like smooth jazz going on, playing background, and he's just passed out in his shitty apartment, and then his cat wakes him to be fed. And of course, he's got to go down to the store to get some more cat food, but because it's a cat, it will only accept a particular brand of cat food, and the store's run out of cat food.
Well, he first tries to give it like cottage cheese, and I was like, oh
yeah,
god.
yeah. It's cottage cheese. I had to rewind it to work out exactly what he's put together. But yeah, it's left from the fridge, leftover cottage cheese, and they sprinkle some extra salt on top of it, and then puts it in front of the cat. It's like, really, Mallow?
I guess it's like milk, but still.
Yeah. So that doesn't work. So yeah, he gets this other brand of cat food back and locks the cat out of the kitchen. Takes the label off the old can of cat food with the brand name on it, puts it on the new can, and serves it up to his cats. And wouldn't you know it, the cat's not fooled.
It is hilarious that like I have seen this movie in the past, and one of the things I remember about it is kind of the opening with kind of the skyline in the distance.
Yeah.
I also vaguely remembered something about a cat right at the beginning, and it's interesting because it's like for this kind of detective thriller, like the first 10 minutes of it are devoted to him going down to the store to get cat food. For a Philip Marlowe, Raymond Chandler, detective, hard boiled. It's like, what?
I mean, I think this is classic Robert Altman, really, because his films are never in a hurry, really, and they they just let things happen, like in the scene. Basically, he'll just pop his camera down. And I think the camera's always moving in this. It's always got a kind of, a bit of it's never static, but it's letting the world happen around it, and you get the sense that like, when the camera stop rolling, these characters will carry on living, their lives will go on, and he's famous for like overlapping dialogue and like semi-improvised kind of scenes, and basically again just let stuff happen, and like spontaneity and kind of vitality of his scenes. So it does feel like a very kind of grounded and real kind of setting. But yeah, the cat thing was his idea, because there's not a cat in the book, but apparently Chandler was a cat person. He did have cats. So I think he read like one of his memoirs. I think Altman did, and goes, "Oh yeah, we'll get that in there." I basically told Elliot Gould that that first sequence with the cat and the food, he says that's the theme of the picture. You can't lie to a cat. Basically, everything like after that is basically about that. It's about like perspective, and like you can only push things so far, and kind of pull the wool over people's eyes for so long.
No, I want a Garfield detective movie.
Yeah, that would be amazing. So yes, it's quite loose in its structure. It's just Marlowe wandering from place to place, and picking up things, more things to investigate as it goes. As with a lot of these, it starts with a few different kind of cases he's chasing down, but they're all kind of interlinked or at least vaguely related by the end of it. But it all comes back to basically this friend of his, who was taken down to Mexico, and then may or may not be dead, and there's definitely guys after him, and he's definitely taken money from them. And then he gets hired by this woman whose husband is this well-known, well-off novelist, but very very much an alcoholic, and goes missing regularly, and he's found at this kind of high-class kind of psychiatric hospital. It seems like he's been put there against his will, and like there's this sinister doctor trying to get him to pay up with his not inconsiderable fortune, insisting he's paid, and the guy doesn't want to. This character is played by Sterling Hayden, who most people would know from Doctor Strangelove. But before this, 20 years before, he was best known for film noir films. He was in quite a few of these detective movies himself. So it's
he was in The Killing as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's in The Killing. He's in one I watched the other day, Naked Alibi. And he's in
The Godfather.
He's in The Godfather,
yes.
What's the other John Huston one? He is also in Asphalt Jungle. So he was in quite a few of these kind of films. So it's like a nice reference back to the past and kind of the kind of stars that were in that era of movies the first time round, but basically playing it like a has been kind of very volatile kind of man, and he was a towering kind of presence anyway, Stonehead. And I think he was like 6'5", and he's just stomping about this great big bushy beard, and just going for everyone, and having like these moments of placid kind of philosophical musings, but then the very next moment he's biting someone's head off, or he's had a bit too much to drink and he's getting violent and agitated. Apparently he didn't see eye to eye with Altman, and he was in real life, basically for all of his scenes, there wasn't a script because he couldn't do it. He wouldn't hit his mark. You couldn't give him dialogue. So Altman just says, all right, drink what you like, smoke what you like, I'll just film the results. And that's basically what they did. So you had Elliot Gould sitting there trying to keep to the script and just respond to what Hayden was doing in that scene, basically. And that's some of the best sequences in the film, really, kind of that dynamic, between Marlowe and what's his name again, and Wade, Roger Wade, because a lot of it takes place in like his beach house. It's this beautiful kind of place like right on the shoreline. It's one of my favourite shots in cinema. Actually, there's a bit with Marlowe's gone to so Wade's back. They've brought him home, and they're kind of trying to carry on as normal as they can do, and they're having a big domestic, him and his wife, and while Mallo's there, and they just tell him to go out and wander the beach for a bit, and we'll call you back in when we're ready to speak to you, and having this blazing row in like their front room, and like they've got like a screen door like in front of them, and like they're in the reflection of that while they're having their row, you can just see Marlowe kind of just kind of ambling up the beach, just trying to amuse himself and trying not to listen in, but it's very much they're all in like the same shot, and it's really really nice sequence. So Elliot Gould wasn't like the first choice for this role. I mean, it's possibly not really a classic Marlowe. I mean, I suppose of like those detectives, I suppose he's not meant to be polished. I think maybe Sam Spade is a bit more of like a kind of a sharp kind of aggressive kind of go at it kind of detective of this kind of mold. I think Marlowe's always a bit more of an outsider, a bit more kind of goes with it and improvises, but I think they wanted a bigger name for this at first, but eventually when Altman came on board, he said, oh yeah, no, I would get on really well with Elliot Gould. He is this character, as far as I'm concerned, he is my vision for this, and I think he described him as like a man out of time, basically like the character from the Chandler novels had basically just fallen asleep and woken up 2 decades later and just carried on as he was, basically. Yeah. This screenplay is written by Lee Brackett, who again another connection to like the classic film noir kind of era, because she's a very successful novelist, but her screenplays from the 40s and 50s included the original Big Sleep. So and she's gone back and adapted another Chandler book, and one of his better known ones. And I think her and Altman basically works out that we can do the straight adaptation of this, but it's like times have changed. We need to mix this up a bit, So we'll have him as like one of the few moral people in a very amoral kind of grey, kind of morally grey kind of society. He's straight as an arrow, but he can't really get a lot done with the world like it is. So they kind of dealt with that, and they also obviously changed the ending because, spoiler alert, his friends when he had gone missing, he hadn't died. He was just kicking back, relaxing in Mexico all this time, and after all the crap that Marlowe goes through for him, he shoots him cold blood right at the end.
By the way, Kieran, this may be an appropriate point. Do you have the Marlowe description from The Big Sleep?
I do indeed, yeah. Admittedly, The Big Sleep is the only one of the Marlowe books that I haven't read. It's something that I need to go. And every time I see it in a secondhand bookshop because I want to get them secondhand, it's like, it's book 4. Yeah, it's just like, can I get number 2, please? So this is literally the opening paragraph, and it's only a couple of sentences of The Big Sleep. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning, mid-October, with the sun not shining and a look of hard, wet rain in the clearness of the foothills. I was wearing my powder blue suit with a dark blue shirt, tie and display handkerchief, black brogues, black wool socks with dark blue clocks on them. I was neat, clean, shaved and sober, and I didn't care who knew it. I was everything the well-dressed private detective ought to be. I was calling on $4 million, which is a hell of an opening thing. It's just like, I was calling on the $4 million. It's beautiful. It just hits you.
But straight away, that's not really the Marlowe we get in the film. And yet he's very keen to keep his tie. You know, he's got some standards. You know, he'll always keep that on.
No powder blue.
Yeah, he's wearing a suit. You know, permanent 5 o'clock shadow. You know, always looks like he can drag through a hedge backwards, essentially, and very kind of. I don't know, chills and kind of, you almost call it almost like a stoner kind of look about him. You know, he doesn't do drugs as far as we know, but, you know, he drinks, he's chain smoking. I mean, one of the great character details I've always loved is just every scene he's smoking, but every time he's going to light a match, he just strikes it on whatever surface is available, you know, wall.
Just walks into a house, somebody else's house, and just goes,
furniture, just whatever's available, just do that each time.
I think the one thing you don't see him do is strike it off the heel of his boot, you know.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's just this depiction of it feels almost like, you know how we had, like, again, like the revisionist westerns. This feels like a revisionist Marlowe, because again, Bogart's look again in kind of The Big Sleep. I mean, I think I might have seen the film. If not, I've certainly seen stills. But even if you haven't, you've only seen the Maltese Falcon, you can pretty much just lift him up and drop him into here, and they're pretty much the same because it's from the same time. That kind of striped, very kind of clean cut, sort of almost elegant individual is not the Marlowe you have here. This is one that's been run down by life, you know, sort of.
I mean, there's little details in the costuming that you might not notice. Like apparently, I mean, until I saw this, there was an interview with Elliot Gould on this Blu-ray. Until I watched, I didn't realize apparently his suit jacket and pants don't match. They're like slightly different blues, you know. So they're obviously from 2 different suits, you know, and you can't tell because of the color correction in this, but the tie apparently is covered in little American flags. But again, you can't pick that out because cinematographer Vilmos Zsigmond tried to approximate human vision through a post-production technique of exposing the undeveloped negative to additional pure light, a technique called flashing, which literally dampens blacks and softens intense colors until they've gone past pastel hues. So that's why this film has that kind of look to everything slightly dulled down and kind of muted, you know, more than, you know, you'd normally expect for a film of this, a color film of this era. So basically, in the final product, it looks like it's just wearing a dark red tie, doesn't it? But no, it was a brighter tie, and it has little American flags on it apparently, but they kind of disappeared in the, you know, in the post kind of color correction. But yeah, he's obviously very, you know, he's kind of a bit, he's almost like, reference for Kieran here, he's almost like the Patrick Troughton Doctor Who, you know, and that he's a bit shambolic and a bit scruffy, so people kind of underestimate him because of that. But you can tell he's always working stuff out, and he's still at standards, you know. It's like he's there to do a job. So, you know, the suit's important, the tie's important. Tie particularly is important.
Patrick Troughton's Doctor Who, affectionately known as the Space Hobo.
Yes. Yeah, basically wearing like an ill-fitting, mismatched suit and bow tie, and just. I mean, he looked like a silent film star, didn't he? He looked like it was almost like a Chaplin outfit. Yeah.
You say that, you know, he's always trying to work stuff out, but at the same time, he also seems like it's just all being thrust on him, and he doesn't really care. It's like proto-inherent vice.
Yeah. I mean that refrain. Yeah, it's okay with me. You know, to everything, basically everything that's thrown his way. You know, it's like, yeah, it's literally he's not flustered by anything. He's not fazed by anything. You know, he's threatened multiple violent times, basically, by gangsters and cops and people trying to lean on him. And he kind of holds his tongue in those situations. He knows he's going to get in trouble if he just shoots his mouth off. Like he comes out with too much of a quippy remark, like he does half the time. So he kind of holds his tongue, but equally, you can tell he's just you're just like, right, I've just got to get through this. I'll just kind of keep stum for now, and hopefully get out the other side of it. I mean, it's a very, very strange scene later on where he's being threatened by the gangsters, and and the main guy says, "All right, we'll take our clothes off, so we're not hiding anything."
We should note that scene features a very special individual.
Oh,
right at the end.
Yeah, you think Sterling Hayden is big in this movie? Jeez.
Yeah.
I think you'll find that
you see 25-year-old Arnold Schwarzenegger
in a non-speaking role
with a mustache.
With a mustache, yeah.
Strips down to a highlighter yellow Speedo, and it's just like bulk of a man. Like, good for him.
Yeah. I like the broken off in that scene. But before they get any further, but you almost think it's like, have they just noticed how big that guy is? It's like, I don't want to take more clothes off. We can't compete with that. I feel inadequate now. So apparently, this is quite sad. Apparently, Elliot Gould always had an ambition to play Marlowe again, and he said no matter how many years had passed, he'd always want to come back and just play Marlowe. However many years had actually passed in real life, just an older Marlowe, just still living his life,
coming out of retirement for one last job.
Yeah, but you got the rights to like another Chandler book that doesn't feature Marlowe, but it would be rewritten to actually feature him as like a latest case. And in fact, that they sold them the rights to. I think it's the Curtain is the Chandler story they're going to adapt, which apparently the main distinctive feature of that is the twist in that is the killer is a 10-year-old.
Agatha Christie wouldn't have dared to do that.
Yeah. So, but imagine like Marlowe kind of grappling with those kind of moral implications. That'd be fascinating. So he said he'd always want to do that, and he said no matter how many years has passed, as long as I'm still physically able, I'll do it. So he's 87 now. He's still around, but he's 87. It's probably not happening now, sadly.
It's somebody has to. This is a legacy sequel where somebody has to go visit Marlowe in the retirement home for a cameo appearance, to give a key piece of information, and then they turn up again right at the end as part of the final battle for 5 minutes.
Well, the good thing is Gould is still alive, so like, if they could make Robert Towne's third movie in the Jake trilogy and just bring Marlowe in,
crossover, bring
Nicholson
Jack Nicholson for
out.
that, and bring Gould back. That'd be amazing.
And Numi pace out of nowhere.
Because the original concept for the Jake Gittes, obviously we'll come on to it, but the Gittes stories was you'd revisit him every decade or so. And just see how what's going on. This is obviously one of many kind of 70s kind of revival detective films, from this decade. When especially inspired by the novels of Chandler and Dashiell Hammett and people like that. So you had Marlowe 69. You had Chandler 71. Then you had a new adaptation of The Big Sleep. You had Long Goodbye. You had Farewell My Lovely. You had a TV version of Double Indemnity, apparently, which I've never seen. And then obviously you had things like the remake of The Postman Always Rings Twice, into the 80s. So there are a lot of kind of different versions of these characters out there, and I think in the 70s alone there were like 2 or 3 different versions of the character of Marlowe. So it's obviously like a character kept on giving. There was still a certain draw to seeing what a new actor, a new kind of creative team behind could kind of do with this kind of story.
And I can't speak to Altman specifically, but like all the 70s revisionism was guys growing up going to movies and then making movies in those genres that they loved.
Doing their own versions of the things they grew up with. I mean, obviously we've talked about George Lucas and Spielberg, haven't we? And they're echoing their kind of Saturday morning serials and stuff like that. So, and I think we've mentioned American Graffiti for Lucas as well, haven't we, in the past?
Yeah.
There's definitely an element of that. But going back to like Marlowe being kind of a man out of time, not really fitting in with this world. I mean, it's just going with the flow and kind of just taking it a day at a time, not in any rush to kind of. It just wants a moderately successful detective business, and just be able to keep his apartment, keep his cats.
Well,
while
this
his
is
hippie neighbor, while his half-naked hippie neighbors, across the way have all the fun and.
Well, I mean, this is one of the things that you kind of have to have in a detective story that goes outside the normal police procedural, and even in a police procedural to a certain extent, is that essentially they cannot be the main character. They stick to all the rules. They must break some rules. They must be an outsider in some way in order to do that. I remember doing this at A level when we did Luther. As one of our case studies, and saying that even though he is a police detective, he's on the police force, he uses methods and gets in trouble with his own guys over and over again for doing things which are not by the book. And it's because they're not by the
gun.
Yeah, it's because they're not by the book that he gets the results. But in order to get the results, he has to put his career on the line. Essentially, you have to straddle the line in order to be the hero. You must go outside the bounds. And obviously, this Marlowe's kind of out of space, out of time. He is othered. Jake in Chinatown will come to is not only private detective but is also getting in trouble with everything. He's constantly outside, and as we'll see, kind of Elizabeth Salander and Mikael Blomkvist, God Track and Tattoo, are also outside the system. In order for you to have a detective, you must be in some way othered. You must be outside of the normal procedures of things in order to succeed and discover the truth.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're describing
Definitely.
Kyle MacLachlan in Blue Velvet the more we go on. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's very
not
much
not relenting on that. Not relenting.
Yeah,
Never will.
Yeah.
No.
I think we used kind of the detective being like brilliant, almost supernatural in their brilliance, the way they pick things together and how they're just so far ahead of everyone in this. Mal in this, it very much isn't that. Yeah, he knows his stuff. He's smart, he's sharp, he can put it together, but he's having to think on his feet and very much kind of improvise as he goes. And just as his situation gets worse and as more and more things start piling up, that don't quite fit together, he's gonna. Yeah, he's got to really kind of consider his place in the world. I mean, Altman's kind of commenting that Alec Gould, you are this guy, you are this version of the character. There couldn't be anyone else playing it, really. I mean, at this point, Alec Gould, he wasn't really in a great point in his career. He'd broke through, he'd had a few hits. Then he'd gone off, he'd had a few flops as well, and then I don't think he wasn't in a great place financially, relationship-wise, everything really. I think he was seen as a bit of a joke, really, in Hollywood at the time. He was struggling to get work, but except for his mate Bob, said, "Oh no, you kind of, I can see, that this was kind of a bit of a career revival for him." And he still now looks back at this as one of his like better roles, and I think his comments, he says like, not many of my contemporaries would have seen this film at the time, but he was grateful that again, it didn't really make a hit in LA. Obviously it's an LA based movie and it's about Hollywood. You got the hooray for Hollywood refrain a few times. But I think it was mismarketed, like on the West Coast, and as more like a more straight kind of detective kind of procedural, and people went and they were disappointed. That's not really what they got. By the time it opened in New York, they rejigged it to be more honest. That this is a more as Kieran said, like a more postmodern thing. It's going to be. It's not going to be your dad's kind of detective movie. It's going to be very much a new, clever, groovy version of that. And it's this kind of Philip Marlowe the kids will be up for spending time with.
I think the poster really speaks to that. The theatrical poster, it's Marlowe holding a gun and it says nothing says goodbye like a bullet, and like.
Yeah, that's how they mismarket it.
He does not hold a gun until the end of the movie.
No, I know. My favorite random kind of thing in this, like a little character detail, is obviously he's obsessed with his cat. It's all about the cat, really. But when you see him leave his apartment, there's the door. The apartment door's got a cat door in it, and it's got El Porto del Gato on the cat written on the cat door, which if I was meant to translate into Spanish as cat's door. But unfortunately, Marlowe Bollocks this has misspelt. It's misspelt it. He's misspelt the Spanish word for door. So it actually says La Puerta del Gato. So he's made the effort, he's thinking, oh yeah, kind of, I'm hip, I'll make concessions for my loved one, for my cats, and I'll make a concession, to the Spanish cultural influence, in LA, but I'm not that good at Spanish, so I'm putting that much effort. So it's all a bit slapdash, like a lot of the stuff he does. There's also another scene earlier on where he's been interrogated by the police, when they're looking for this, his friend who's gone missing and thinks he's involved and he knows more than he's letting on. And they take him into like the interrogation of taking his fingerprints, but he's still got the ink on his fingers. And just to throw them off a bit, just to make a scene, he just smears it all over his face and does a very, very poorly aged Al Johnson.
Al Jolson.
Who's the jazz singer guy? Al Jolson, yeah, he does a very poor taste Al Jolson impression. Which apparently again was improvised, I think Altman I don't think he was happy with the scene particularly. He just said, just do what you want, you'll come up with something. And lo and behold, it's definitely memorable.
It is. They got that right.
Yeah.
Does the John Williams score stand out to you? Because I really just remember The Long Goodbye playing over and over again.
Yeah. Put it this way, until you said that, as I was flicking through the Wikipedia article and came across composed by John Williams, until then I couldn't have told you it was John Williams.
Agree.
Yeah. I mean, basically the whole soundtrack in this is various versions of, apart from Hooray for Hollywood, it's various versions of the song The Long Goodbye, basically kind of different iterations of that, played differently. Apparently Marlowe was going to play it on his harmonica at the end as well, but no, you can't do that, so he didn't. He kind of just did a little out of tune squeak on it,
I think that actually works for his character, though.
It does, yeah. I mean, I think that's what he argues. I think he said something along the line. I think that's what Altman wants him to do, and he said, "Well, one, I can't really do that, but I could probably put a bit of effort in and maybe do something like it." But it's like, wouldn't it be better if it was a bit shambolic like everything else I'm doing in this movie?
It just reminds me of the Potter films, and the third one before they filmed it. Alfonso Cuarón asked Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson to submit essentially for homework a piece of writing about their characters. Daniel Radcliffe did 1.5 pages. Emma Watson did 8 pages like Hermione. Rupert Grint didn't do anything, and when asked about it, it's like, well, Ron wouldn't turn anything in, so I didn't. And it's like they get their characters completely,
Absolutely, yeah. There was another point I was gonna make, but I can't remember what it was now.
I'm sure it'll come up again at some point.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I mean, tell what you guys think of the film. I mean, this is without doubt. So I saw this first time at uni. I've seen it a few times since, and this is unrivaled, just one of my favorite detective films. I think it's just so of the era and just kind of sweeps you up. And it's like, it doesn't really matter if the plot's not all there, kind of, kind of things aren't resolved. It means kind of things left quite, obviously, yet you have the resolution of a killing at the end, which is quite definitive. Everything else left pretty open-ended. I think it's just so atmospheric and good looking, and his performance is just so singular, just perfect for this version of that character. I mean, it's like this random bits of slapstick thrown in here as well, just really good moments of physical comedy, like him running away and just getting hit by a car, which is kind of a trope we've seen so many times in comedy kind of crime films, since. And this must be one of the first ones there, where your lead character is just out of the blue, just hit by a car, while running away, and it's very much a question. Oh God, is that it? Is the film going to end here? And you cut to the the hospital next scene. There's a guy head to toe in bandages, and you go, "Oh, is this Marlowe?" And then the camera pulls back, and he's just in the next bit.
Yeah, there definitely is a feeling that a lot of this is kind of Marlowe is around and the plot kind of happens to him in a way.
Which to be fair, is also what happens in it with most of the Indiana Jones films as well. I mean, it works. It works for some heroes.
Yeah.
And that stuff felt like one of the gangsters, is tailing him. He's the one of the gang who he kind of sort of gets on with. Because kind of see eye to eye. So he's not really a bad dude. He kind of they can have a laugh together, but also he's working for this like his brutal boss, and he's just this little guy in a sharp suit, and he's like following him. And Marlowe says, "Look, you're not supposed to let me see you. Just stand there looking tough, and I'll be back soon." He goes in this garden gate, and the guy just jumps up on the gate, tries to see over, and Marlowe just opens it and kind of swings him forward on the gate. Just little moments like that. So Alec Gould, he kind of is quite self-deprecating about his performance. He just said, his main role was just to keep continuity of the cigarettes, just like from shot to shot. If he's always got a cigarette, he needs to know like at what point are they in the scene, and where was I when the camera cut, and just kind of. I think he said that the hardest bit was in the lead up to him get hit by the car. He was saying to Robert Altman, he said, "Oh, Bob, I don't really like running, especially not on camera. Is this necessary? Is this what my character would do?" And he kind of was like, "Well, yeah, you're kind of running for your life, really, aren't you? So yeah, I think you would run across like a busy road." Says, "All right, I'll do this." "Oh, by the way, do you still want me smoking a cigarette in that scene? Because that's going to make it a lot more challenging." Altman said, "Yes, I do." He says, "Right, okay, so I've got to keep track of the cigarette continuity and get hit by a car, and then." pick up a Lacey, kind of when he kind of puts his head up, after getting hit. Right, okay, so cigarette's still up in my mouth, and I've got to keep track of how much I've smoked. All right, okay. But yeah, it's a strong vibes movie, really atmospheric, and I just think Alec Gould's kind of superb. One of the great kind of shambolic kind of detectives, who gets there in the end. Despite everything the world kind of chucks them.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have guessed it's an Altman movie either. I knew about this movie. This was my first time watching it, and then you mentioned last week it was Altman, but then realizing that, I was like, oh wow, yeah, that's interesting.
I just think the naturalism and the way the dialogue kind of blends into each other and plays out, and all the improv and everything like that. It's just, and that's classic Altman. But yeah, I suppose you're more used to him doing something more extravagant, really. Kind of his biggest films. This is quite low key for him, but I suppose more along the lines of MASH. That was quite low key, really. It was it's a war movie, but like a naturalistic kind of war movie where not really a lot happens. Just like this, a naturalistic sex movie where not a lot happens.
And before this, he'd done Images, which is just images, just like this realist, weird ghost hauntology stuff in a house in the middle of nowhere.
I probably need to see more Altman, really. I've seen MASH. I've seen Gosford Park, which is one of his later films, and I've seen Popeye. I've seen a couple of others, I think. But yeah, he was an interesting director.
Certainly was.
And I was surprised to see that the contemporary reviews were more mixed to positive. I was under the impression that most people didn't like it, but I mean, Paul and Cale, Vincent Canby, Ebert, Siskel, I mean, they were kind of on the cutting edge anyway. And we're like, yeah, this is awesome. But, reading through the people who said, oh, I don't like this, it has to do with like, well, I like this kind of Raymond Chandler adaptation. And, if you're looking for the more traditional detective story, you're not going to like this. And it's like, okay, I mean, that's fair.
And there are a lot of, like, not to go off on another tangent, but there are a lot of kind of films, except this is like just post New Hollywood, isn't it? Really, we're past like the main films that kind of typify that kind of movement. If you call it a movement, but it's sort of still on the fringes of that. And
I'd say we're in the midst of it, really.
Yeah, okay. I think of it more kind of late 60s into very early 70s. But yeah, okay. If we're stretching here, it's still the same kind of themes and characters, deconstructions of like American iconography and masculinity, and especially in the wake of Vietnam, like there's lots more questions about, kind of, when a country's been through like trauma, and kind of what makes a man at that time, and kind of what they expected to do. There's lots of questions about like, the classical ideas of masculinity, and again, kind of this version of Marlowe's, and to an extent Wade as well. They're very much like different versions of masculinity, but very flawed versions of masculinity, and they're all kind of got a mountain of issues they're working through, and basically just stumbling through life, and just just making the best of it, making it bearable for themselves in the moment.
For the record, I think of New Hollywood just as anything from like Easy Rider to Heaven's Gate. That's my
okay.
Which this is a United Artists film.
Yep.
So yeah, it's very much in the spirit of like, auteur, deconstructionist, the things that were big in the time period.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So from that,
we take a very long leap into the future, like an eternity away to the next year.
Yes.
Next year. Yes.
The next year. Well, maybe you've heard.
Still in LA. Still in
LA. Maybe you've heard of a movie called Chinatown. I don't know. We could do an
forget it.
Yeah, we could do an entire Chinatown episode probably, but we're just doing it here.
I mean, we did do an entire episode on the sequel many years ago.
That's true. I mean, I wish I'd finished The Big Goodbye, which is the like main book on like Chinatown and that era of Hollywood. It's by Sam Watson. The Big Goodbye, Chinatown and the Last Years of Hollywood. And like the opening of it, it's talking about Robert Towne and Robert Evans and Jack Nicholson and Roman Polanski too. And we'll get it a little bit into the Roman Polanski stuff, but yeah, Chinatown. In case you have not seen it, it is sort of the definition of neo-noir. Like when you think of what is a modern, quote unquote detective movie, it is Chinatown, and its plot, I think it could be kind of condensed into private detective Jake Gittes. He's investigating what seems like routine adultery, only to uncover a vast conspiracy about water rights, land theft, political corruption, and the violent legacy of Los Angeles and one of its key powerful figures, Noah Cross, who is played by John Huston, who obviously was a big director in the 40s and did a couple of the movies we watched for that. Did he do both the Humphrey Bogart movies we did, the Maltese Falcon and the other one? Which I can't think of.
And the did we do the African Queen?
Yeah, I think he did. I may be
wrong. Yeah, he did, because we had all those stories about him going off hunting. Just basically, he chose like a particular location in Africa so he could shoot bigger animals, basically.
Yeah, and
sounds like a very Hemingway thing to do.
Yeah,
it's so. This is a movie where there are, three really big, if you're going to talk about like the creative force behind it, like it is the trio or quadro, whatever you call four people, if you include Nicholson.
True.
Yeah. Robert Towne.
Quartet?
Sorry?
Quartet.
There we go.
Overrated word.
Robert Towne wrote the script. He wanted to make a Los Angeles trilogy. And so the first one was about like the 1910s water wars. But like, obviously he's not concerned with like literal history. He wanted to bring it into the 30s, condense stuff and just kind of give the myth making spirit of LA's history with this film. And apparently what he wanted, to kind of figure out is why is Los Angeles the way that it is. and he worked with like a historian to write about like that era in Los Angeles. It was 1910 to 1913, I think, the Owens Valley Water Wars or something like that.
Yeah.
So he wrote the script. Robert Evans, who produced The Godfather, he's the head of Paramount at this point, and he wanted to have the period setting. He really liked that, and he wanted it to be authentic, but also not nostalgic. He insisted on the casting of Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway, and Roman Polanski was the figure responsible for taking Town's script and making it as dark as it is. So, there were the elements of like, incest and corruption and all that present within Town's script. But Polanski rewrote it, got rid of sentimentality. He was focused on like really just making it dark. Like, I don't know how else to put it. He insisted on a spoiler. Faye Dunaway's character, Evelyn, she dies. He insisted on that, and Evans backed him, even though Town was not in favor of it. And his European sensibility and the environment of those early 70s filmmakers, he was tapped in, and he wanted to make not necessarily realistic, but just make it a I don't want to keep saying dark, but it's shot very much in light. That is an interesting thing about it. But he was the one who wanted it to be gritty, and versus Town, who was more about like, there are problems, but there are, Los Angeles is nice. I'd be interested in reading Town's original script for it, but
we should also very quickly say, yes, this is a Polanski movie. We have discussed this on previous episodes. Go see whenever we last touched on Polanski for more information.
I will get into it specifically here a little bit, because after a few years after this movie was when, keeping it factual, Roman Polanski did plead guilty and was convicted of unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor. It did happen. The victim has spoken about it in numerous interviews in the many years since. That case is why Polanski fled the U.S. The day before sentencing. He went to London and then went to France, and as a French citizen, he could not face extradition to the U.S., and that is why Roman Polanski currently resides in France and Poland, and can't really leave. And he
gets Adrian Brody Oscars whilst still being in Europe.
Yeah, continuing to make movies, but we could do also an entire episode on like Hollywood's response to all that. The victim, I don't know, but her name is public, but like not to keep the focus on Polanski, but what she talked about was like or to excuse him, but she said it was very much the environment that caused like the police and the media to not speak out fast enough. And she apparently in the intervening years in 2008 says, I don't wish for him to be held to further punishment or consequences. However, he has not been held to any consequences. So that's the Polanski of it all. Surely prior to that conviction, he had been, doing stuff, but I can't say for certain. Those are the facts of the Roman Polanski stuff, and it is dark, it's horrifying, and he's a bad guy. But man, Chinatown is like it's the only Polanski movie that I have watched over and over and over again, just because it is so good that and the problem is he is in it. He's the one who also insisted on cutting Jake's nose, and then he does it himself. His fingerprints are all over the movie, and he's a very important figure behind it. But he is obviously to say the least, controversial figure in film history.
Yeah, there was I can't remember when it was, probably a couple of years ago, there was at one of the festivals, a kind of retrospective of Polanski's work that was kind of endorsed by several kind of big kind of actors and filmmakers and kind of absolutely denounced and destroyed by others. So it is very polarizing. Still, his work is sort of, after this thing of sort of 45, nearly 50 years on, sort of, do we still respect the art and the work that he's done? Because, like, as much as we hate to say it, like, he did the pianist in, it was the pianist, wasn't it, in 2002?
Yeah.
And as much as you want to hate the guy, it's a very good film.
Yeah.
Like that's the issue and stuff like that. So it's like where do you draw it?
He was kicked out of the Motion Picture Academy of Arts and Sciences or whatever, and
Yeah.
he appealed his removal, and they were like, no, you're out.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
there's that.
I mean, the early days of Hollywood. I mean, even going into like the new Hollywood era, it's there are plenty of monsters out there, and it's out there that they were monsters. There's plenty of evidence for it, but it's almost like that old cliche: time heals all wounds. And I suppose the further back it seems, like the more like history it seems, and the more you can kind of put into perspective. Like. I don't. Maybe when he's dead, it'll be easy to discuss it.
When he's dead and not receiving royalties, I'll have less issues paying for his films, not secondhand.
I've thought, far issues when people are still out there profiting, with their horrible views, profiting from. Like I still, that's how people say, oh, separate the art from the artist, and that's how much. Separate issues, I know, but that's how important Harry Potter was growing up to me. I cannot just read anything even vaguely related to that franchise anymore, knowing that J.K. Rowling is still out there and still using her platform to spread hate speech.
Yeah, and like Polanski is even worse because Rowling can change her views. You cannot change what Polanski did to traumatize a child.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like the way Tarantino treated it was like, factually he's there, but the focus is Sharon Tate, and Polanski's just kind of on the fringe of it. But Chinatown as detective fiction. We talked about going outside of the bounds of the law. Jake talks about he used to work for the DA's office, and they told him to do as little as possible. But that's not what he does as a private eye. He does as much as possible. He's a very good private detective. There are things happening to him, but he's also very proactive. He's aggressive.
He's definitely more of an active kind of, I suppose, classic hero compared to compared to Elliot Gould, as Marlowe, just kind of just gets swept up in things. Jake is making things happen. It's like a lot of the worst things that happen in the film are as a result of his actions. That one.
And there is no classic femme fatale. There's Faye Dunaway's character, who is a victim herself. She has been, she has her husband involved in this mess. Her father is involved in this mess. Her daughter is involved in this mess, and she's just trapped. And ultimately, what Jake is going to do with her is trying and resolve things for her sake and get her to safety is his goal in the story. But what makes this revisionist, and I'm sure that there are older noir films that have this sort of as a point, but the ultimate point of the movie is that the truth doesn't matter in the face of power structures. And I mean that it's forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown is the ethos of the film. It's just you can't do anything.
I mean that's the reason why decades have passed, but it still hits so hard because nothing at all has changed.
No.
It's like rich, powerful men can still get away with anything, as we know from the world we live in now.
You kind of have it kind of is able to kind of have it both ways, for the audience, kind of the mysteries have been solved, but you leave it on the downer that absolutely does not matter. So kind of in terms of kind of the kind of puzzle solving element from a plot kind of genre point of view, that all works and it hits all the beat and we can go, therefore it is satisfying. But at the same time, it is incredibly depressing and bleak because this means absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, the plot in this is probably, though impressive and obviously very well done, again, of how it's all structured and how things are revealed, is almost like the least important part of this. I mean, there's how many times I go back to this, I will say I do get lost at a certain point in this, and then it gets me back. I kind of say, wait, hang on, what? You can't really follow Jake's kind of thought process. His deduction. Which I think is kind of intentional, really, because I think he is meant to be like one step ahead of the audience about some things, but obviously some things blindside him as well. But it doesn't really, even if you're lost, you're not really putting all the pieces together at the same rate, and you're trying to follow kind of the chain of events. It almost doesn't matter because it's kind of the kind of the feeling of it, what the character's going through, and like the emotional content is just so raw, and affecting. That's the more kind of important aspect of it. So.
Strangely enough, of the two films, like, Jack Nicholson in this feels more like a traditional Philip Marlowe.
Yes.
Than Medical does in an actual Marlowe movie. It's so strange.
Yeah. I mean, you'd mentioned in our chat during the week here, and that Jack Nicholson is one of these guys who always basically plays Jack Nicholson, which there is an element of that.
I am convinced that Jack Nicholson has never actually acted in his life. They just film kind of Jack Nicholson doing random stuff and come up with a film around him. It's just exactly the same thing every time. I'm also convinced there was a good 20-25 year stretch where they're like, we need somebody that looks like they've just flipped off their handle. Is Jack Nicholson available? It's just he was the go-to.
I hope
I think Austin Butler will be one of those now, or Skarsgård.
I think when he bombed those eyebrows, it just works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
One of my favorite Jake scenes is when he's in the barbershop and the guy's confronting him about his work, and he insists that he's a good detective, he has a real job, and he's so angry, it gets in his face, and that really does contrast with the Marlowe in the other movie, where he's a bit more passive. I cannot see that Philip Marlowe trying to beat up anybody, whereas as Jake does beat up a henchman. Let's see.
And get beaten up. I mean, admittedly, I did also put a thing when I was rewatching Chinatown of kind of take a drink every time somebody approaches Jake in attempts to essentially buy him off at some point. Because it happens at least 3 or 4 times. It's like this, come to him again, and it's like, don't do this, come to him again. Oh, please do this one, come to him again, please do this one. As it just stacks up, and you just keep taking the drinks. It's ridiculous. It just like keeps happening, and that's layers and layers and layers.
This has got one of my favourite kind of one-liners kind of put downs in like film history, and I love it, even though I'm not sure I entirely understand it. it's you're stupider than you think I am.
It's to the audience trying to follow that sentence.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But you can just see like the heavy's kind of faces, these kind of those lines, and he's kind of trying to work it out, just as we're trying to work it out.
Don't try to understand it, feel it.
Yeah.
And it's I think one of the things that I think of when I think of kind of classic detective stories is the conspiracy being bigger than initially believed. He's hired by a fake Evelyn Mulwray to see if her husband is having an affair. Then it turns out that's not her. Then the real Evelyn Mulwray shows up and is like, oh no, we need to investigate. I don't think her husband had died at that. Maybe he did. I don't know. But yeah, her husband died.
How many times have you seen this movie, Jake?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
You're not with Jake for the duration of this movie, obviously.
Yeah, I'm constantly just saying, forget it, me. It's
There's a
Chinatown.
lot of information to keep. There's a lot of information to keep track of, isn't there?
There is, and it's because Sam, have you played L.A. Noire?
I have, yes.
Yeah, Kieran, have you?
I have not.
Okay, you should. It's like clearly borrowed a lot from this movie in terms of like it's
LA Noire is basically LA Confidential meets Chinatown.
yeah, it's so good. But yeah, like you're in LA uncovering a grand conspiracy about I don't remember what there, but here it's water. Because they are there in the desert, right? LA is, and water is a huge resource to keep the city functioning. And where are they getting it from? The big powerful people are buying up the orange or lemon groves, I can't remember which one, in the valley, which John Huston has the line, you either bring the water to LA or bring LA to the water, by expanding the city and its power, which John Huston is, God, he's so low key in this movie, but it works perfectly. It's kind of a speak softly, carry a big stick kind of role.
And I don't know how much truth there is to this, but it might be apocryphal. But Jack Nicholson was seeing Angelica Houston at this point, and John Huston apparently didn't approve of the match, and that kind of meant their scenes a bit of extra kind of hostility. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
I will say, I just kind of sat here and gone.
You can definitely buy it, I think, even if it wasn't true. You can kind of see that happening.
I kind of just sat here and gone. Just in general for films, take a drink every time a bad guy in LA. Most of their motives revolve around property.
Yeah.
If in doubt, it's something to do with stock markets and making a load of money off it, flooding something or destroying something or something for property prices. Like,
it's one of the classics. Yeah,
this is one Mulray ghost away from being a Scooby-Doo movie. Yeah.
Or a Superman movie,
Yeah. Geez. There's in the middle, like it keeps me more engaged than The Long Goodbye does, just because I love Nicholson and the film in general. I'm captivated by it. The way that it was shot in the bright lighting is so different from the shadowy, mysterious, classic noir films, which from reading about it, like what people say is that there's it seems obvious on the surface because of the visual styling.
That tonal dissonance of like say everything being in bright sunlight versus the really shady kind of just twisted, depraved kind of themes operating below. I mean, that's very, very intentional. I mean, have you ever noticed before in this movie that everyone's got colds? Everyone's got runny noses and they're coughing away and stuff. That's obviously a choice we made. I don't quite know what it means, but it's like, is it just everyone's got like a summer, is there a summer flu going around or something? But you do notice it if you watch it a few times. Everyone's like, because got a dripping nose, wiping the nose and stuff. It's like the archivist. I think obviously Jake is dabbing his nose for a different reason because he nearly got it cut off. But yeah. I think the coroner he goes to see as well is the same, and there's quite a few characters who it was.
Jake likes his nose. He likes breathing through it.
Yeah,
it's representative of the sickness that is underneath LA. I mean
it's permeating up through LA. Yeah,
that's another bit of like sort of. I mean, it's not like subtle or anything, but visual metaphors that everything is in the pipes, it's in the dams. It's literally built into the architecture, the secret underground darkness of the city.
I mean, I was
sorry, Sam. You were delaying on my internet. I think if you were saying something else.
No, it's fine.
No. I was just the introduction to my copy, hilariously enough, on The Big Sleep is by thriller writer Ian Rankin, and says that by the end of the book of The Big Sleep, Marlowe describes the bright gardens outside the Sternal Mansions having a haunted look. We've realised that the sunny and prosperous California is a tainted Eden, place essentially dark and full of blood. And that could just straight up translate to Chinatown, because it's exactly the same premise. And the two, I mean, obviously Chinatown is drawing on the noir traditions. I mean, the opening titles are in sepia black and white. So you think you're going to get a black and white movie. And it's like, that's a really nice. I mean, loads of people are doing it now, doing the old Universal logo for various things. Everyone's doing that. That's the equivalent of. But obviously, Chinatown is drawing on, if nothing else, The Big Sleep and others.
Yeah. Seeing that classical logo with like these kind of the jazzy, the brass kind of
so good.
Yeah, the opening like credit sequence and then the closing credit crawl, like just the decision to kind of evoke the more classic Hollywood style there. It immediately grabs me.
I love like the first scene in his office, where it's like again, it's like classic noir kind of tradition. It's like you take your time before you reveal. Take your time before you reveal your hero. You see him kind of lounging about his desk. There's like various objects around the room. Kind of you see bits of him. You basically see everything before you actually see his face. The camera's almost like teasing the audience, before revealing your hero, which is quite a nice touch.
And I'm sure we have said this specifically, but I'm going to say it again. Jack Nicholson's so damn good in this movie. He's so good.
It's an understatement. He's incredible.
I mean, it would be a good movie otherwise, but realistically, I'm going to say Jack Nicholson makes this film. Like, it's a very good film if anybody else was doing it, but he somehow even outdoes the material. Like, and again, this is from somebody who I don't think actually acts a day in his life. Like, he just turns around and it's just like every single second, like, it's just so good. And this is somebody whose second favorite film is The Shining with Jack Nicholson. Just like, this is is this technically a better performance?
He never
is close.
He never has to go over the top, which, not that that's bad. But yeah, he keeps it very naturalistic, I would say. Obviously, people loved it at the time. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Jack Nicholson, Best Actress for Faye Dunaway, Best Original Screenplay, which it won, Best Production Design, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, Best Original Dramatic Score, which I love. I was listening to the score, waiting for y'all to get on the Zoom call, and Best Sound. 11 total nominations, the one win. Bad year going up against Godfather Part 2, unfortunately.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes.
I guess that's how it got original screenplay, was it technically was not adapted from anything.
No.
But yeah, people loved it at the time. Critics loved it, but obviously two of the key scenes in the movie were a bit controversial with audiences, at least. I'm not sure about critics, but the scene where Faye Dunaway reveals that Catherine is her daughter and her sister, and Jack Nicholson is slapping her, trying to get the truth.
And she just says the other thing each time. She's my daughter. She's my sister. She's my daughter. And she goes on and on and on, and it's.
Yeah, then she breaks down with, she's my daughter and my sister, and Nicholson realizes, oh, did he rape you? And she's like, yeah, and it's dark. And then the final scene is like just, it made me cry today. This has never made me cry before. But like I don't know what it was about Faye Dunaway getting shot through the eye this time that it was so impactful. But it's just what white American society has finally recognized about the police. I mean, it was even present here.
And just the sight of like the last things you see, before the forget Jake's Chinatown, as you see Noah Cross, dragging his his incest baby off, just and it's going to keep happening, isn't it? It's just and he's going to keep getting away with it. There's nothing to be done about it.
There's the two cops who have been kind of tailing Nicholson at this point. They tried to bring Jake in, but he escaped them. So they're in the process of arresting him, and he's with Noah Cross, and he's like, he is the bad guy. He is the one involved here. You need to arrest him. You need to hear me out. They're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. They're gonna arrest Faye Dunaway for the murder. They're gonna arrest Jake for covering it up. And she gets in the car with Catherine, drives off. She had shot John Huston, Noah Cross, a few moments prior, just in the arm. He's fine.
Yeah.
And one of the police detectives shoots her. You see the car swerve and you hear the horn, and you hear Catherine screaming, and God, it's so powerful. And then they're like, okay, well, Jake, you're free to go. And
earlier in the film, Noah has like two very crucial lines of dialogue, both delivered to Jake. He's kind of basically setting up everything that's coming and proving himself absolutely right. By the final act. So he says, because to talk about what you can get away with basically as a rich man, and he he controls everything, and he says, of course I'm respectable. I'm old. Politicians, ugly buildings, and whores all get respectable if they last long enough. And of course, at the end, he ends like their lunch kind of meeting with this final warning, which again comes to pass. It's which I think is one of the great lines of dialogue in all cinema. You may think you know what you're dealing with, but believe me, you don't.
Yeah, and that's Jake is standing over the corpse of Faye Dunaway, who she's the victim here, but it's that she's seen as a perpetrator, and so now, well, the case is closed. She murdered her husband. And forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown, and all the Chinese people come out to, look at the spectacle that has occurred outside. Like, I don't know how many endings this bleak had occurred by 1974, but I mean, this has to be pretty high up on the scale of really dark endings in Hollywood films to this point.
I suppose you'd had a fair few films in New Hollywood era, especially where your lead characters die horribly, but just the uncompromising nature of the kind of events in this, just there is no bright side to any of this, is it? It's a really nihilistic kind of ending, really.
Also, this is ripe for scholarship, especially modern scholarship. Putting aside the Polanski of it, because this is you could death of the author now. You could just read the film and it completely ignore Roman Polanski. In terms of like patriarchy, colonialism, it's ripe for interpretations about like the literal reproduction of patriarchy through the incestual relationship between Faye Dunaway and John Huston, just creating both a source of power, a horrible, union that, poor Catherine, like I'm not saying she's bad or anything, but the way that American society has just continually reproduced itself and whatever. I read a couple bits of scholarship. That's that.
On a slightly lighter note, it's interesting how totally and utterly this has kind of permeated kind of popular culture. There's quite a few kind of films that you do like basically do the Chinatown plot in a slightly different form, but it's essentially the same. But right down to an explicit and intentional kind of evocation of it. Think of you guys ever seen Rango? The animation,
the lizard
Johnny
movie?
Depp as the chameleon. Yeah, the lizard movie, and it's basically a western. He's a domestic chameleon wandering into the desert, and he finds this little desert town where all the animals are like dressed like cowboys, and they're having their little fight against bandits and everything. But basically, the final act of that film is Chinatown. It's like the corrupt mayor of the town, a turtle in a wheelchair who looks just like John Huston, has got a pot which is basically stealing water from one bit of the desert and putting it to another bit of the desert. So,
And
I did
No, that
see
was
very quickly. I did see with Rango somebody doing an analysis that there's a chase with a like a water drum. I think I haven't seen the film, but there's an analysis of it where they've gone, "This is Mad Max 2."
Yes.
And they'd compared the two and gone, "This is just ripped straight from Mad Max 2."
Nice. Yeah. I mean, its enduring legacy as a great film, in spite of Polanski and everything around him. Just it speaks so much to the film, its popularity, and I do think part of that has to do with the ability to just say, we don't have to talk about the Polanski part of it. We could just talk about the movie as a movie, and I don't think that's separating the art from the artist so much as just acknowledging practically that you can interpret art separate from its author. Yeah. Especially when there isn't a singular author, which this is a shining example of who is the auteur in this instance. Very much a trio. So, yep.
Boom.
Yep. Chinatown. Go watch it. Good movie.
Yeah, definitely. And now it feels like for something completely different. Although still not without its controversies. Sure. Actually.
I just saw the Swedish title for it, which I didn't know.
You did not know the Swedish title?
No,
so the original Swedish title is Men Who Hate Women.
That is an appropriate title for this film.
Yeah. So originally it was so Got the Dragon Tattoo is the English title. So Stieg Larsson, originally spelled S-T-I-G, Stig Larsson, but he had a friend called Stig Larsson who became an author as well. So he changed it to Stieg Larsson to avoid confusion. So he originally planned a series of 10 books. He'd submitted 3 to a publisher, which are the 3 that we've got. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. Passed away in 2004 before any of them were published. And so they all of them came out posthumously. So he'd planned 10, and I think they found sort of 3/4 of a fourth on his laptop. Which I don't think has been published, but so other people have been taken on sort of the series.
Yeah,
so
other authors, they've done like a new trilogy, haven't they? And then they've just started like a third trilogy, but it's like a different author for each trilogy.
Yeah. So just looking through it, David Lagerkrantz has done The Girl in the Spider's Web.
I wondered where that came from, because I knew that movie was related to this, but I didn't see it in the movie trilogy.
Yeah. So he also wrote The Girl Who Takes an Eye for an Eye, and then again wrote the 6th one, The Girl Who Lived Twice. There is a 7th one written by Karen Smirnoff called The Girl in the Eagle's Talons. But they're it's kind of like the way that people have done more James Bond books or Sherlock Holmes stories since, kind of some of them are officially carried on by the estate, and
the estate has to approve the authors to carry on the story, don't they?
But kind of when you're really talking about it, you talk about the main 3, which is Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or Men Who Hate Women, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and then The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest, which in Swedish is something like sort of like the castle in the air which was blown up, which it kind of sums up that 3rd one.
Mathematically, that fits.
Yeah. So it kind of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or Men Who Hate Women, is the first one, kind of revolves around 2 main characters. One of them, Mikael Blomqvist, who is a journalist for the Millennium newspaper, small newspaper, kind of expose newspaper, sort of 6 or 7 staff members. They publish very infrequently, a couple of times a year. It might be once a month, it might be twice a month. Once every 2 months. I cannot remember specifically. And at the start, he's sort of quite a well-known paper. It's a sort of very left-wing paper, sort of activist paper, but he has published an expose of a kind of big kind of business owner, Werner Strom, but it has been found that his writing contains information which is false, and therefore he's been done for libel successfully.
He's been fed fabricated evidence, hasn't he, as like a trap for basically it's like an industrial espionage, essentially, wasn't it?
Yeah. So depending on which version you go to, either the book, the Swedish film, or the American David Fincher film, depends on if he ends up in prison, essentially. But whilst he's waiting for that to happen, he gets contacted by the head of the Wegener estate, the Wegener business, who is a Vanger, even Henrik Vanger. I'm having to check the. Yes, I've read all the books. I've seen the two films just now, the last couple of days, and I can't remember the names. So Henrik Vanger, who's big Vanger family. They one of the biggest corporations in Sweden, who now mainly specialize in fertilizer. Got like 20,000 employees. It's a whole family business, and hires him to superficially write a biography of his life. Kind of Henrik is sort of 70s, 80s, very old, possibly going to pass away quite soon. But also, kind of under the surface, is actually going to be investigating the disappearance of his daughter or granddaughter, or niece, something along those lines, family member Harriet, when she was 16, back in the 60s, I think it was, on a specific day. And so it brings him in to do that. Whilst that's going on, there is a kind of side character who will eventually connect up. The side character is Lisbeth Salander, in the film played by in the 2009 film played by Noomi Rapace, who will eventually go on to star in things, probably most notably in Prometheus as Dr. Shaw. And there's also in The Drop as well with Tom Hardy, which is actually quite an underrated film.
It's a really fun one.
Yeah,
that,
and also probably the most thing she's done most notably recently was in Lamb, the Icelandic kind of body horror,
which is amazing. It's so,
it shouldn't be, but it's so weird.
It's so effed up, but it's really good.
Yeah, it's so weird, but it's so good, and this is kind of her breakout role in this film, kind of like worldwide attention. She plays Elizabeth Salander, who is the characteristics of her are so debated and out there. It's kind of what makes her an interesting character. She's like a goth punk rocker with kind of the black hair, piercings everywhere, the goth boots, but she's also a hacker. She's got a photographic memory. She's been a troubled kind of childhood, 24 years old now, and the backstory goes on long and into the sequels and stuff. But essentially, she is hired to kind of get information on Blomqvist, and eventually ends up teaming up with him as part of the investigation, because essentially Blomqvist gets information that she's been doing dirt on him in a different way depending on which version you watch or read, and then they meet up by him going to her apartment, and they meet up and take him down.
She spots, because of the way her brain works, she spots a pattern in the evidence that he hasn't picked up on, which kind of gives them the next big lead and allows the investigation to proceed.
And so they team up together because they think that actually the disappearance is probably a murder. And then they discover there's a chain of murders going back through the years, and they kind of investigate a string of serial killings and big conspiracies and all this kind of thing. And I mean,
by the way, she's 24. Why is she is she a ward of the state? I don't understand why she has a guardian.
She is a ward of the state. So because of her history, and she's been in and out of institutions and foster homes and so many things like that, essentially she's kind of seen as almost like a danger to herself and to society, and therefore she needs a legal guardian in order to make sure that she is kind of not going to go out and.
I think it's also part of the Swedish justice system as well, isn't it? To avoid lengthy prison sentences, they have they bring in guardians, and it's like very intensive kind of parole almost, isn't it? Really,
that makes sense.
So
because here, once you're 18, you're screwed. But it's like a kind of a parole officer. Yeah, that makes sense.
Sort of thing. Yeah.
I mean, like you see at the end of this, even when Blomqvist, actually does serve out his prison sentence, it doesn't look too bad, does it? He can use a computer.
I mean, you have to understand. I mean, Sweden in general is the third largest country in Europe and has a population the size of London. Like, it's got 10 million people in it. There's nobody there. Stockholm's got 1 million in it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like most of it is just empty. There's one main road through
but
Sweden, it's the E4. That's it.
Yeah.
I think
but very much into the idea of reform and self-improvement as opposed to punishments, for most crimes, which.
And I think
enough,
if it's something for kind of like slander, it's not going to be like a maximum security prison,
No.
So
well, I think I've heard like the Norse shooter Anders Breivik has like pretty good, like relatively set up in jail. Like,
I think basically he just lives on an island on his own. Just the isolation's his.
Isn't that what Clarice offered Hannibal Lecter in The Fake Deal in Silence of the Lambs, essentially? Little Alcatraz kind of thing. Yeah. So it goes off in all directions. If you, for one reason or another, this we'll say story in its various forms has had probably as much kind of critical analysis as anything published and made in the last sort of 25 years, and a lot of it is to do with this character Lisbeth Salander. And I think a lot of people, and probably myself included, the more I thought about it, I mean, I read the book, I got the first one, and the first sort of 100 odd pages, I'm like, okay, it's the first sort of what you see in the first 20 minutes of both versions of the film, especially the Swedish version, is about 130 odd pages in the maybe slightly less, but it's fairly kind of procedural. It's a lot to do with the Wernerstrom case in that. The film condenses it down. Once it gets to the fact that, there's lots of murders, hang on. Now this is getting interesting. And the first book is amazing. The second one took me a while to get through. The third one I read in like 4 days, and it's like 900 pages. It's so good, even though Lisbeth Salander is literally in a hospital bed for like 700 pages. It's ridiculous.
And I would say, in terms of the adaptations, that kind of fits. It's like, I think the first one's definitely the best. Second one, bit of a dip in quality, but still diverting, and the third one back up, and it's really interesting again.
Yeah, because essentially the third one is a massive court case.
Yeah.
And it's preparing for this massive court case. So there's loads of interesting things that I was kind of looking at for this. So I've read a couple of articles and bits on it. One of them, and essentially, you get to a lot of it, and a lot of the academic stuff is kind of based around Lisbeth Salander as a character and the ways that her character kind of interacts with the story, interacts with genre, interacts with general controversy like that. Because when it was coming out, you had essentially half of the world going, new age icon, new kind of hero, feminist, revolutionary, the kind of person we all need, and the other half going, is Stieg Larsson actually kind of fairly misogynist? And one of the scenes that revolves around, and I refer to a section in Beyond Bombshells, the new action heroine of popular culture by Jeffrey Brown. Does a good sort of 35-page breakdown analysis, mainly of the Swedish film, although does go into the American adaptation as well. And both of them are fairly similar and close together, and actually fairly close to the book. It focuses on some things that the others don't. So a lot of Mikael Blomqvist's relationship with Erika Berger, the other person at Millennium, gets focused on a lot and is a deep focus for the books, whereas pretty much the Swedish version kind of, you see Erica for like 1 or 2 scenes and then it's completely ignored for the rest of the film. It's like, that's a side plot, which get on with the main stuff. But kind of they bring that in because they're looking at, especially there's a scene in it. There is a realistically a couple of scenes where Elizabeth Salander has a new guardian who sexually takes advantage of her once and then literally ties her down, chains her down, and forcibly takes advantage of her we'll use the word rapes her.
He brutally rapes her. Yeah.
It is brutal, but she is aware that this is going to happen, and so has videotaped the whole thing, and comes back later, tases him, ties him down, sodomizes him whilst the evidence is playing, and tattoos something along the lines of "I'm a sadist, a pig, and a rapist" onto his stomach. And a lot of the kind of analysis has been essentially gone, yes, she's fighting the good fight, but at the same time we have scenes where is not far removed from scenes that you'd find in kind of 70s rape revenge movies, and so the old arguments get dredged up of is this if there's not. Jeffrey Brown does a very good job of going, here are the arguments for, however, at no point is she kind of seen as kind of scantily clad or anything along those lines. He draws up things that are going on at the time, like Black Widow, for example. You first see her in Avengers. It's like, yes, she's tied up and she kind of kicks her way out of it, but the fact is she's kind of got the hands behind her back, her chest kind of thrown out like that, hair's tousled in a way. There is still sex appeal on it. First things like Nikita as well, the TV series, where kind of they're tied up, but it's in kind of clothing where it's obvious to outline the body shape and stuff like that. It goes, with this, you get none of that. She is not sexualized before it. This is not a sexualizing thing that happens. She doesn't really change after it. There's no kind of, I was timid before, now I've been brutally changed as a result. It's just... And so that is one of the things that go on about it, and people will still argue one way or another, especially because the story goes that a lot of it was inspired by an event that Stieg Larsson will has said that he witnessed it. Somebody else has said that it was a secondhand source that he recruited on his own. That when he was 14, he witnessed an assault, a sexual assault by 3 other people of a woman called Lisbeth. And he, through fear or what have you, did nothing to stop it. And racked with guilt, kind of going on, a lot of his stuff and a lot of this is essentially an attempt to kind of purge himself and find a way to right that wrong. And so a lot of that is channeling through, and a lot of then is then going, Stieg Larsson, therefore, if this is to be believed, has history with this kind of stuff going on, therefore how does that play into it? There is also quite a good article by and I've now obviously I've got it open and I've lost the name of the thing. So imagining autism, fiction and stereotypes on the spectrum. So there's a chapter in there looking at admittedly specifically the 3 novels of how Elizabeth is portrayed as being possibly autistic. And so in the book, they're like, autism, possibly Asperger's syndrome, and all these kinds of things.
And we have that classic kind of example of that, how it represents, when her whichever information broker she works for, their office, one of their clients comes in to speak to their best technician, and he says, "Oh, Shmorny, she's a bit strange." Oh, strange how? It's in a meeting,
Funny how?
No eye contact. She hands him a report of all of her research, and he goes, "Well, summarize it for me." And he asks a lot of questions, and she keeps saying, "It's all on the report. It's all on the report. Read the report." Like, why am I being asked these 12 questions? Why am I being asked to to engage in a social situation? This wasn't what I signed up for.
So that article or that book chapter is interesting because it goes on the one hand, again, at least in the books, but these are fairly close approximations of the book, so some ideas transfer across. So that essentially a lot of it is in the first one, then essentially into the second and third one, Larson seems to have a kind of distrust of psychiatry because it's inherent in a system which is corrupt, essentially run by men, and they're just useless anyway at diagnosing stuff. Even though she's got autism or may have autistic tendencies that seem to align, kind of there are misdiagnoses from doctors or specific kind of fudging of information which comes out in book 2 and 3, and it's all a conspiracy against her for big top reasons and, government conspiracy reasons, essentially, kind of stuff. But then also says that Larson kind of, a lot of the language that a lot of the characters use is kind of othering her in such a way that therefore kind of dehumanizes autism, and it's kind of a lot of the information you get about that is through a kind of neurotypical lens. So all these characters like Blomkvist and all these characters, kind of the things you say about the about a photographic memory, or, oh, I wish I'd have that, kind of makes it almost like a superpower, which makes up for the negative traits, which is another detective thing. Again, you have deficiencies made up in intellect.
Yeah, such a classic trope in detective fiction, isn't it? I mean, just they can do what they do because their brains work differently, and they can, if you find that compelling. I suppose the recent classic example, obviously, you think of Kenneth Branagh, making that explicit in in the recent Poirot films, but you also think of
The Accountant.
You also think of obviously Will Graham, in the Hannibal series. Again, that's very, very much part of that. It's the way he sees worlds, the way his brain works, and how he relates to it.
And even Sherlock Holmes,
gives it powers. The Cumberbatch version, especially.
To go back to the assault of it all, I realize it's in the book. And I need to read like what are the feminist, critical perspectives, but ultimately I'd question like what's the necessity here, because while she does reclaim her sexual agency later, it's like that feels weird too, that there's just sex scenes in this movie with an assaulted character. Like I feel, not that normal violence is any better, but it is a bit less distasteful on film. I just wonder if you could have had a scene where she encounters those three guys who are trying to like rob her or whatever. Could it have just been they beat her up and then she gets revenge or something? Not that that's better in a violence against women sense, but it's palatable.
And I would say the Fincher version of those scenes are even more problematic. So I think it goes through an even more extreme version of them.
It's just all sensation
and how things are filmed.
Yeah. I will say that it is very good filmmaking in all the versions. I'll try and keep bringing it back to the Swedish version because this is the one I've chosen to look at. In that it is brutal and it is harrowing and it is meant to be. There are several things I think what is relevant. One, because it fits in with her storyline of battling against a system, and this is part of a system. This will feed into the main kind of murder mystery plotline where it's part of a system which is hiding kind of corruption, especially towards women under the surface. That and the fact that a lot of the story is about placing Lisbeth and Mikkel on an equal footing. And a lot of the time, it's constantly trying to place them as equals in various situations. And just as Lisbeth is tied up and attacked at the beginning, you have, spoiler, no spoiler, at some point, Mikkel is tied up and attacked later on in the film. So you have to have a parallel there. It also, bearing in mind, comes from a book originally titled Men Who Hate Women. That it's so much a part of all the books. I mean, 2 and 3 essentially is taking down national sex traffickers. Which links into the next one.
Yeah, the second book is her confronting her own personal trauma more, isn't it? And then, as you say, the third one goes into the wider kind of institutions and everything that makes these horrible things possible.
So I appreciate that you could probably find other ways to show it, but I do think that it fits because of parallels with other parts of the story. It's not pleasant to watch. I'll give you that. It's not pleasant to read, and as I think. Again, as what was his name, Jeffrey Brown pointed out, going back to the book version, because when it came out, everyone goes, "Oh, it's sensationalizing this." He goes, the kind of assaults of Elizabeth. I mean, the main one is about a page in length. The reverse, where she goes to her guardian, whose name I've forgotten, and essentially ties him up and shows the footage and does all this stuff, is 8 pages long. So if anything, kind of the reverse, it's like if you're saying that it's salacious in kind of the masochism and that kind of thing, in terms of weighting, that doesn't really kind of add up in terms of the focus. So if nothing else, you can see why, for various reasons, this has been kind of both highly praised and seen as highly controversial at the same time, because there are elements of the story and, you know, which will translate to the film, which are like, this is dodgy in these various respects. Did you? Well, Sam's looking up a name here.
Yeah. So it's Björman.
That's it. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I also, you know, I'm sure there's something to like her being, you know, non-traditionally feminine, and you know, she, you know, I'm not sure exactly how she identifies because it was written by a guy in like 2002 or whatever, but like there's androgyny to her character, and you know, there's definitely something about the way like power systems perceive women, no matter how they present.
Yeah. I've definitely seen criticisms of their. I mean, I think it becomes better fleshed out in the sequels, but especially in this film, I think there's criticisms about their relationship dynamic and how she's kind of, she has to be like a queer woman, you know, apparently only interested in women up to a certain point, and all of a sudden she turns up at his bedside, you know, and said, "Oh, you know,
I mean,
I'll go for a heterosexual."
I mean, the thing with Blomqvist is,
but obviously we don't know for sure what she was into before, but just based on the evidence, what we've seen, I think. I mean, some criticism saying, well, it's making it more, I don't know, more what you'd expect from this kind of a story. Really, you know, she's too unconventional. We're gonna have to bring her a bit closer to like the classic.
Also, the Blomqvist scenes seem like, you know, essentially masturbation with another person. Also,
yeah.
Well, the thing with Blomqvist is that it is a very, very, very thinly veiled fantasy of what Stieg Larsson would like to be, because he was also a newspaper reporter for most of his life, and it's like, oh, now you've got this kind of newspaper reporter that goes on adventures and gets all the girls. Strange this.
I mean, can I say something just to praise Michael Nyqvist for a bit. Michael Nyqvist, R.I.P. By the way, he died way too young. He just started appearing in Hollywood films, you know, like Mission Impossible and John Wick. And
I was going to say that's where I know him from, the first John Wick movie. Yeah,
I was like, why do I recognize this guy? Oh yeah.
But I would say for Blomqvist, I think Daniel Craig in the Finch version is completely miscast. I never understood that it just doesn't fit the character for me at all. You know, as good an actor he is, I don't think he's right for that role. I think Michael Nyqvist in this, I think he is perfect. Blomqvist, I think he's got a tough role in all ways, because obviously you know, Numa replace you know, in like the showier kind of noticeable kind of role, we know of all the quirks and kind of you know, traumatic backstory and everything like that, and you know, the kind of all kind of the attention grabbing kind of stuff to deal with. But he's got to tie it all together. He's got to be like the fixed point, you know, that you know, that everything else can move around, you know, and I think he embodies like all his doubts and neuroses, and you know, he's trying to do the right thing. You know, he's essentially keeping busy now while he waits to, you know, learn his fate, isn't he? But he obviously gets completely wrapped up in this mystery and has to, you know, find the truth behind it. You know, it's like he's helpless to like his journalistic kind of instincts. I think he's really fascinating that way.
And he has to be the ordinary man, kind of with some kind of aspirational thing, and his aspirational thing is his doggedness, which actually is one thing I think comes across slightly more in Daniel Craig's version than in this version of the. I think Fincher goes slightly more kind of this and builds it up a little bit, not faster paced, but more stuff is little bits are happening. You get more of a sense that he's constantly doing things, whereas Nyqvist's version is kind of a little more kind of not meditative, because he's still plotting things out, but it's less a kind of not spelling it out, but there's more of an internal kind of thought process going on, and you have to contrast that against Salander, who I will quote again from the autistic label, diagnosing an undiagnosed girl with track and tattoo from the Imagining Autism book. The opening for that chapter, again, it's mainly on the books, but it still works. It says the incredibly popular Elizabeth Salander is liminal on every axis. She's cast as sexually other (in brackets bisexual maybe), physically other (in brackets a diminutive boxer), religiously other Satanist, politically other anarchist, legally other murderer, and neurologically other a mental disorder. So it's you have to, with somebody that's so kind of out there, you have to have somebody else normal for an audience to, or most of the audience, in order to be able to relate to, in order to balance the two out.
Well, but going back to the Daniel Craig thing, I mean, obviously with the Knives Out films, it's like, Benoit Blanc, with all his kind of quirks and accent and everything like that. He's a showy role, but in each of the films, he's been paired with with like a straight man, just to be the, with an audience surrogate, to go through the experiences we do. He's got
every Holmes needs their Watson.
Exactly, yeah. And
every Poirot needs their Hastings.
Exactly, yeah. Like I say, you do need kind of the contrast. I mean, I'll give it this. I mean, honestly, I really love the original kind of Swedish film.
It is very good,
and I like the sequels as well. And I was mixed on the Finch version for a variety of reasons, but actually, as soon as you're on the islands, it's like it's all gravy from there. It's just so captivating. You just want to just get to the bottom of it, and just it's so.
And as much as Finch's version is kind of dark and very noir-esque, this is just straight up like grey bleakness.
It's so desaturated.
If you want kind of Scandinavian noir as a movie, this and probably the original Insomnia.
Finch's is possibly, considering that he goes to kind of more extremes with like some of the sexual violence and stuff like that in his version. It's almost like his version of this story is like too glossy, too polished. There's this kind of slight kind of, there's more of a grittiness, like a nastiness to this, when you go into like the proper horrific revelations of the story later on, I think.
And there are some changes and other things that are not about in terms of the pacing. So the again, the abuse that Salander kind of experiences is kind of out in the way and done with in the first 30 minutes. And then we kind of move on with it. In the book, it's far more spread out. And I think even in regards to than the Daniel Craig, the Fincher version, and kind of the ties up with that, I'm fairly sure are quite late in the book, because that kind of, you've got kind of the three plot lines going on. You've got the main kind of murder investigation, which is both of them. And then you've got the Wernerstrom case, which is kind of Mikkel Blomqvist's kind of own kind of thing, and then you've got the Guardian case, which is Salander's thing, and you've got that bit in the middle which ties them both together, and at the end it solves them both out. So it kind of, the main plot gets solved, and then it spends another sort of 50-60 pages going, let's finish off the side quests now, as things go on. So it
is
does,
like Wernerstrom the bigger like story across the three books. Like, is that the case in the last book? Is actually nailing him?
It's actually not. There is another big bad that kind of comes in. That's kind of part of Salander's past and stuff like that.
It's kind of connected, but it's not actually the main thing they're shooting for.
It's just so funny when, I can't remember which version it is, she goes, "Oh, I hate hospitals," and I'm like, "You're gonna be stuck in most of one for the third one." For most of the film, like it's like 900 pages long, and she gets out by like page 700. It's just, I just saw that and I'm like, yeah, get used to it. It's such a very bleak, dense film, and it's really nicely plotted as well. It's just nicely paced. It's dark enough to go to a kind of area of kind of Swedish history that I don't think a lot of the wider world are kind of familiar with.
It's like the Nazi sympathizers and collaborators in the war, and then like how they were still around after the war, you know, and kind of went underground but was still active. Yeah.
And I think when you think of that, you think of the kind of Nazis and Nazi sympathizers. You just assume it's just Germany, but no, because obviously they were drawing on the idea of an Aryan race, and where do those ideals come from? They come from Scandinavian areas and Viking heritage. And guess what? The Swedes are, you know, the Viking heritage. You know, so it's really interesting from that perspective, just to see something else come in.
Yeah. What's also good is like a classic kind of murder mystery. Obviously, you present with your list of suspects, and they're all potentially plausible. You know, actually, you got a little bio of each family member. You know, what they're doing, are they still around? You know, kind of what groups they have and everything. What's nice about watching it as an English speaking audience, you know, watching a Swedish version, is a lot of these. I think a lot of them are probably fairly big names in like the Swedish film TV industry, but for us, unless we've watched like like The Killing or whatever, you know, we won't recognise many of them. So there's probably very little indication for many of us who the most likely suspect is. When he comes to the Hollywood remake, the biggest Swedish star in it, you know, it's going to be him. You know,
I
mean, I don't know.
I just find it hilarious that they didn't actually cast him in the original.
Who's the big Swedish star who ends up in Hollywood? He is the killer in the Fincher version.
Well,
that's the interesting
Max
thing.
von Sydow's already died, or he's not died yet, but he's kind of too old, so I can't do him.
I mean, this is a old movie at this point. Like, I mean, go watch it before we spoil it. But like the mystery that the killer involved is not like the killer. There is no killer. The mystery is that actually she's alive, and it's oddly like I don't know, happy.
They uncover a serial killer who's been working for decades, who is a family member, but he didn't kill the one they're looking for. She got out.
She kind of is a MacGuffin in that sense. That she's kind of eventually unrelated to the plot, but is related to the plot. And I think actually, as Jeffrey Brown,
which is kind of heartbreaking when it comes down to it, because one of the main things is when she goes missing, there'd been a big car crash on this bridge that's like the only connection to their islands. So they presume, well, she must be dead because she didn't come back. Why wouldn't she come back? And then obviously you get the revelation about why she didn't come back. It's just because her life was a living hell. She'd been put through so much. So much horror by her family, by her brother and her dad. That's the big
possibly
punch
another link
at
to
the
Chinatown.
end. That's the big punch at the end. That they presume she must be dead because she didn't come back. But why would she come back to that? Of course, she was going to get out if the opportunity presents itself.
Interestingly enough, you're saying that you think Daniel Craig is miscast. Again, Jeffrey Brown's chapter is interesting because a lot of it is on the torture of characters and Salander, but also brings in the fact that obviously Daniel Blomkvist has a torture scene in this. And obviously, Daniel Craig, very famously, only a couple of years earlier in Casino Royale, had a very famous kind of torture scene, and he does quite a bit. It's a very interesting chapter. I haven't read the rest of his book because this one was specifically on God, Dragon Tattoo, so I read that. But there's a very interesting analysis into kind of the way that torture scenes are shown for men and women, and the male gaze, and the fact that essentially it's commonly theorized, if not a universal acceptance, it has been put forward, the idea that essentially countering the female gaze, which is that essentially we linger on the female body, to linger on the male body is to be in a way feminized by it because it's lingering body, and therefore it's almost a feminine point of view, and the male can't stand that. So in order to counteract that, you essentially scar the body to then go, look, we're standing tough through it. We are rugged. We are kind of, scarred in some way, and therefore through this masochism, find a way back, and links, and therefore goes through that to go into. I won't go into the whole argument because I've only skimmed it the once, and therefore will not be doing it justice. But I think it is a very interesting thing, and again goes through a lot of stuff, and it's very interesting if anyone's interested in that. The way that again he deliberately draws on the fact that, hang on, we've got a big torture scene here, and Daniel Craig gets a big torture scene in, and it's a lot, quite a bit more than the Swedish version. It's a little bit longer, and goes, is this playing into the fact that obviously Daniel Craig had this Casino Royale torture scene, which is and draws connection between that and something like the Goldfinger laser thing, which is stupid, whereas that one is very visceral, very grounded, very
and the Hollywood version does the classic Hollywood charismatic serial killer thing of he's going to play some cheery music while he's doing his horrible
I was
work,
thinking very Reservoir Dogs.
Yes, very, very, very much so.
Yeah, I mean, both versions are good. The American version is good, but the Swedish original, I mean, it's bad to say, oh, the original's so much better. But it's interesting that I can't remember which article I saw it, but pointed out that obviously the weird thing with the Fincher remake is that, we've got the American cast, it's all American crew. We're still going to set it in Stockholm, and we're not going to change the names. Any other film would have called him Mike Bloom, and Elizabeth Salamander or something like that. No, we've got Daniel Craig is still called Mikael Blomkvist, and I heard that it took me back. Like, wait, we're doing this, like we haven't moved it to like I don't know, Toronto or something like that.
And everyone basically uses their own accents, don't they? Except for
Robin Wright.
Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara puts on a slight Swedish twang.
A Swedish accent, and obviously Stellan is Swedish, so he just uses his voice.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Does Christopher Plummer does he do a sort of Swedish accent?
I think they all try to do a little bit. Daniel Craig really doesn't. It's just like nobody's going to believe it.
I mean, the thing about pretending to be Swedish is if you see a lot of Scandinavian actors speaking English, it's perfect. They don't really have accents anymore. It's not like Swedish Chef.
Yeah. Well, and completely because I hadn't seen it. Removed from the context of this version, I put The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo as Fincher's second best movie in my ranking of his movies at the Film Magazine. Like,
what did you put as number one? 7, Fight Club, or Zodiac?
Oh, well, you'll have to go read it to find out. But yeah,
I guess Zodiac.
I love his Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Like it is a very well-made film, and
yes, it is.
Visually, I prefer it a lot, just because I prefer saturation.
You like some flair. You like some lens flares.
Orange.
Yeah, this thing I think gets to the heart of it, and as much as I do like Rooney Mara as an actress, there's just something about her which doesn't capture. I think she's too kind of looking away from people, especially at the beginning. Noomi Rapace's version comes in as very straightforward. This is it.
Attack.
Yeah, I am going to. Yeah, she's very much on the offensive. It's I do what I want, and I will put up with people, though I do not want to be here. Rooney Mara's version, at least initially, is very much, I'm going to try and hide away from people, or at least that's kind of the impression that you get. And at least in the first kind of moment, that's a very different character.
Yeah, I think this is slightly reductive kind of description of them both in a review at the time. I think it was something like Noomi Rapace's Elizabeth would nut you, as soon as look at you. It's like whereas Rooney Mara is sort of like the emo dream girl. You fancy in school, but you're too scared to go up to talk to. There's a slight difference in their kind of energy, on screen.
My last point on this movie is I've always thought the poster is really stupid. It's the
Yes.
two of them sitting in
Yeah.
front of a fireplace, and like, yeah, Harriet's picture is above them, but like, it doesn't fit what the movie is at all, in my opinion.
I will point out that for the American film, there was one of the early posters. If you look it up, because the one people know with kind of the Daniel Craig and then kind of the outline of Rooney Mara's head wasn't one of the first ones dropped. It was essentially Daniel Craig with his arm around Rooney Mara's chest, and she doesn't have anything on, and everyone just went, oh my God, they've ruined it. They've Americanized it. We've killed off Sam. That's what they thought at the time. And they've like, they've Americanized it. It's going to be that James Bond goes and saves kind of the manic pixie dream girl. And then it came out and they're like, oh, thank God it's not.
Yeah.
So it's like you say about the posters, like the American one had some controversy with it as well.
At least they landed on one that I think it fits how the movie feels visually.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, it's like they're sitting in a nice study, and like, are they doing that? Yes, but like, I don't know.
And the American version got that kick-ass opening title sequence as well. It's like straight out of a Bond film.
Yes.
Like all like the figures made of oil, and the Carano, Trent Reznor, immigrant song cover.
I will say though, I do not. I think that is ruined by the vocals because it's a cover of it, or as a version of it. It's not the original Led Zeppelin audio, and I think that the music works, the vocals don't. I don't like the vocals on that particular version. I don't know why. I think just the music would have been an instrumental version would have been better. Anyway, both are good. I slightly prefer the Swedish version. Even though there are bits that are cut out of the book that they add back in, especially a lot of the stuff about kind of the Millennium stuff, which obviously it's the Millennium trilogy.
This version has the trilogy.
And I say the others are worth a look. I mean, they actually did extended.
I would have got to them, but I just didn't have the time.
Yeah, they did extended versions of all three as like a mini series almost. So so things like an extra hour for each chapter basically. So that's probably worth a look because they're all interesting. I'm sure more scenes give the characters and certain plot lines a bit more breathing room would be beneficial.
And I'll say for the Swedish version, I don't know about the remake. I can have a very quick look for awards. But okay, it got nominated for a load of Academy Awards, but the original Swedish version didn't get nominated for Academy Awards, but the BAFTAs got Best Film Not in the English Language and got the win, but also just got nominated straight up for Actress and Adapted Screenplay. Not in the not non-English language films, even in the BAFTAs, which are slightly more lenient to outside influence, the Oscars. Normally, it's just we'll give you the one, and unless you're winning every award going, you don't get any other categories. This is how it works.
Yeah. Shall I just briefly mention as well how incredible it was that they did all three films the same year?
Yes, like a full sort of Lord of the Rings style. I also think
I presume filming for a full year and then just released over a full year. I think it was like March, August, and November or something releases.
Yeah. I also think of when they released the '98 version of Ring. They had adapted Spiral at the same time and dropped them on the same day. And the idea is you went to see one day and one on the other. One of them was a success. One of them was not. And they decided to take new storylines from Ring rather than Spiral for good reason. But it's so bleak and it's so interesting to have a different kind of detective. This is still a detective story. I hate to tell you, Jacob. Sorry.
I didn't say it wasn't. I believe you can have a detective story without someone who is nominally a detective.
I would like to point out in the remake, Daniel Craig says something, and then Eric Vanga goes, "Oh yes, the detective has to assume that the person who hired the detective is also a suspect. So the characters call him a detective, therefore, da da da, and he's a detective." No, yeah. The Fincher version is a good version. It is a very good kind of glossy Hollywood version. And I think in the limits of Hollywood, you weren't going to get much better an adaptation realistically. I think I actually think it's slightly undercut by the final meeting of Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara right at the end, which kind of doesn't happen because through the second and third one, and part of the thing with a lot of them, I mean, they're together quite a bit in the first one, but the second and third one, they pretty much don't see each other the entire time. And right at the end of the third one, they meet again, and you get this kind of cathartic moment. With this, there is a feeling of like a Hollywood moment of they have to see each other one final time, and she has to act slightly kind of shy at the same time, and it's like
it's much better the Swedish version of her just happening to see her on like some security footage, like, oh, she's still out there, she's still she's making she's living a life, you know.
And even the communications, there's a lot more kind of emails that are firing off this way back and forward. There's a distance relationship between the two of them that kind of it makes it a bit more intangible, makes her a bit more mysterious, but works better because then she becomes more like the computer, which people have argued like, oh, making autistics like computers. So I just like that a little bit better. I don't. Again, I was watching the remake today, and just that meeting at the end, I'm just like, it feels a little too. It's not a meet cute, but it feels like not rom-commy, but that kind of thing where you have to have one final meeting right at the end to make everything happy, and it feels much more like Salander, just to kind of, this is it, stroll out without saying a word, and both people are kind of not comfortable with it, but accepting that this is what will happen because this is their personalities. And it's just little things like that. I think just the personification of Salander is a lot stronger for Noomi Rapace's version of it. It's not saying Mara's is bad, and if that was the only version we got, it would still be good.
Academy Award nominated performance by Rooney Mara.
Yeah, it doesn't
like,
have.
We keep saying glossy and Hollywood, and like it was obviously a very well received film, like artistically.
It was, but it doesn't have the kind of the bite that the Swedish the Noomi Rapace version is. And I mean, there is a reason why Noomi Rapace was like, okay, in the next years, you're going to work with Ridley Scott on Prometheus and do all these things now, because she just owns this role. She really does, and like you're gonna go, yeah, this is a role that she was made for. And I mean, the amount of like Cybergirl, hacker, kind of these kinds of characters that come around now have all come from Elizabeth Salander. I cannot remember who it was. Somebody, it's not Jodie Foster, but that kind of person has turned roles down before to do other stuff because they want to play Elizabeth Salander-like characters. I think it was Jodie Foster for something.
Could we also say Trinity from The Matrix too?
Possibly.
She's very Matrixy.
To a certain extent, the trouble with Trinity is that by the time you get to halfway through the movie, you've also got Morpheus and Neo. And suddenly Trinity is like, she's also there, but Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne. You know what I mean? Like, her moment is the introduction. Then we'll give her bits in Reloaded, and we ignore the fact that revolutions existed. I think Salander is one of, and will continue to be one of the most influential characters in all her various forms of the 21st century. She's probably one of the most analyzed by now modern kind of literary filmic inventions, because it's all the versions of her which are constantly reinventing the idea. There was a version with Claire Foy.
Which was Spider's Web one, which I haven't seen.
Yeah. Apparently with the sequels, everyone's like, it's still kind of, they're trying, but they just turned it into the stereotypical badass, which is like not Elizabeth
Yeah,
Salad.
I seem to remember the trailer featured a lot of stuff with her on the motorbike. You know.
Yeah, that is very Trinity. But yeah. Anyway, we talked for long enough. Go check out God the Dragon Tattoo or Men Who Hate Women, depending on.
Yeah. To be honest, I think putting out there, I think this is probably the best three kind of combination of movies we've had in a while. I think they're all great watches.
Absolute bangers.
Yeah, maybe we'll do bad detective movies at some point where things don't make sense and are poorly made.
The Snowman.
Oh God, no.
Oh yeah.
At some point, I will watch. There is a 2-part Japanese serial for Murder on the Orient Express, which I still have to watch. Oh, it's gonna be so good.
Yeah. All right. Well. Oh, sorry, Sam. Were you gonna say something?
No.
Okay. Well, that's it for detective movies. We'll be back next week.
That was a long one.
Yeah. Well.
Almost as long with the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Well, we'll be back next week with something else. Until then, guys, where can people find you?
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film and at the Second Cut Pod Substack. This week I have a 100th anniversary review of Phantom of the Opera, the original silent Universal one with Lon Chaney. So check that out. I also did a mini review of Begonia. So yeah, I mean it's still out there. It's still in some cinemas. So you know it's interesting. Give it a watch. Back in the film magazine days, I also did a review of Chinatown. I think last year, I believe it was was that an anniversary? Yeah, 50th? Chinatown at 50. Yeah. So, and yes, I do have a paragraph in there dealing with the whole Polanski thing. So, yeah, if you want to search for Chinatown film magazine, you'll find it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Hopefully you don't find me anywhere. If you do, I'm judgmental various places. I do not have anything up for the last week, but it's about time I took a little bit of a break because I shoved up like 5 reviews in the past 3 weeks. So I should do more, but hey.
Yeah, you've been working overtime.
Yeah. Well, and when Kieran does them, he does them in batches too. You can find me at Jacob Film Guy, and also at the Second Cut Substack. There's stuff there. But yeah, so emails at secondcutpod@gmail.com, and you can find us everywhere at Second Cut Pod. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.